Hey friends, tonight, let's explore the quiet lessons hidden in history, the ones not found in textbooks, but in the rhythms of daily life long ago. Let's take it slow tonight. If you're still awake and still with me, maybe give that like button a gentle tap and subscribe if you'd like to come back for more sleepy wanderings. You begin in stillness. Not the silence of night exactly, but a kind of hushed expectancy. The house is quiet. Your boots are by the door, scuffed and hopeful. Somewhere inside, your mother's wrapping dried meat and cloth, your father's pretending not to be worried, and your younger sibling is stealing extra biscuits from the tin. You've told them all I'll write, and you mean it. But you both know letters don't outrun weather or wolves or bad luck. You're going west because someone told you there's land there, not just any land, free land, fertile, endless, flowing with rivers and the possibility of a better kind of hard life. Not easier, just less cramped, less noisy. A place to stretch your arms without bumping into someone else's elbow or opinion. So you trade your bed for a pile of canvas and a wagon with a name stenciled on its side. It creaks like an old man clearing his throat every time it moves. The oxen look skeptical. You do too. The road out of town isn't exactly a parade. The children wave, a dog barks, an old man throws you a shriveled apple. It misses. Your journey begins not with a bang, but with a clatter and a cloud of dust, and a moment of deep, creeping realization. I don't know what I'm doing, but that's all right. No one does. Not really. Not on the Oregon Trail. Here's a fun historical fact to chew on while you bounce along on your awkward wooden seat. About 400,000 people made this journey in the mid-1800s. Some were chasing gold, others freedom. Many were simply trying to avoid starvation or city filth or landlords who charged rent for walls that leaked like colanders. They packed what they could, flour bacon, a Bible, a mirror, maybe a fiddle, and headed west. Of course, they also packed something else, astonishingly unrealistic expectations. Maps at the time, mostly hand-sketched lies. Guidebooks written by men who'd never walked a mile past Missouri. One book famously suggested that travelers bring 200 pounds of lard. 200 pounds. You could build a lard monument with that much. You, though, have chosen wisely. Sort of. You brought a tin of tea, a sketchbook, and one slightly romantic idea of yourself as a rugged pioneer. This idea will survive until somewhere around mile 48. The first morning, your hands are blistered from yanking ropes and lifting crates. Your shirt is soaked through before sunrise, and you've already lost one sock to mud. Not both, just one. Nature's little joke. The smell of the wagon is something you're not prepared for. It's like dust leather and despair had a baby, and the baby had gas. Still, the road rolls on. You pass clumps of wildflowers. You catch glimpses of deer quick and soft as a breath. You think this isn't so bad. Then the wind changes. It carries with it a scent you'll come to know, well-burned coffee-wet canvas and someone's forgotten chamber pot. You hold your breath. Someone else mutters something about missing the city. You quietly agree, but say nothing. Lunch is creative. You eat dried beans with your fingers and realize you forgot to soak them. They crunch like gravel, and everyone pretends they're delicious. As you rattle down the first hills, you try not to think about how far you come or how much farther there is to go. That's the trick, isn't it? 1 mile at a time, one wheel turn after another. At night, the camp is half hushed, half chaotic. Someone's playing a harmonica. Someone else is arguing about stolen biscuits. A woman quietly sews near the fire. You lay on your back, staring up at a sky so full of stars, it looks fake. You whisper to yourself, maybe this will all be worth it. Then a mosquito bites you, right on the eyelid, and just like that, the dream returns to reality. You roll over, pulling your blanket tighter. The ground is hard, the oxen snore, and in the distance, a coyote howls long, low, and lonely. You smile, not because you're brave, not because you're certain, but because the story has only just begun. Morning on the trail doesn't arrive with birdsong. It arrives with the sound of someone tripping over a cooking pot, a groan from an aching back, and the wet, unmistakable squelch of a boot sinking into last night's mud. You open your eyes slowly, cautiously. The canvas above you is damp and sagging. Something drips on your forehead. You blink. It's probably condensation. Hopefully, you wipe it off and tell yourself it's refreshing. Outside, the world is gray, not a soft, gentle gray like morning mist in a meadow. No, this is a stubborn, low-hanging sky, the color of disappointment. The ground is soup. Mud clings to every step like it's afraid of being abandoned. And this is just day 2. By now, you're getting used to a few things. The constant smell of wet leather, the way your socks never quite dry, and the growing suspicion that your wagon is somehow heavier than it was yesterday. Spoiler, it's not. Your legs are just tired. Here's something many people didn't know before setting out on the Oregon Trail. Oxen are terrible conversationalists. You've spent hours walking beside them, talking out loud just to fill the silence. They blink at you, chew, blink again. You start giving them names not to feel less alone, but to feel seen. Yours are named Horace and Margaret. Horace seems to enjoy staring at rocks. Margaret kicks things, mostly the wheel, and sometimes you. Your wagon party, this ragtag collection of hopeful strangers, is slowly becoming something else. Not quite friends, not yet. But you're bonded by shared misfortune and the group decision to ignore the smell coming from someone's spoiled bacon stash. Breakfast is served with all the enthusiasm of a funeral. Lukewarm beans again, and coffee so strong it could take the paint off a wagon tongue. You sip it anyway, grimacing into your tin cup. Someone nearby toasts, the sky mumbles, to manifest destiny, and nearly drops their cup when a mosquito buzzes past their ear. Speaking of mosquitoes, they seem to thrive on hope and sweat. You have both. Let's take a quiet moment here for a fun fact. The early days of the trail were often deceptively slow. Most wagons only traveled 10 to 15 miles per day less. If someone broke a wheel, twisted an ankle, or decided to argue for 3 hours about which direction was technically west. But the boredom, that was constant. The landscape didn't change much. Prairie grass, more prairie grass, the occasional suspicious rock pile that might be a coyote nest or a very determined shrub. To pass the time, people would sing. Not cheerful campfire songs, but droning, repetitive tunes that made your brain feel like it was trudging too. You hum one now. It's about cornbread and lost spoons. The melody loops endlessly like wagon wheels rutted into the dirt. Someone ahead shouts, "Mud up." You brace yourself. The wheels sink. The oxen grunt. You grab the side rail and start pushing with your shoulder, squelching forward inch by inch. Your boots vanish beneath the muck. So does your dignity. Eventually, with much yelling and cursing under one's breath quietly because children are present, the wagon lurches forward. A great cheer goes up. You slip and fall flat on your back. The mud is cold, and yet you laugh. You're not sure why. It just bubbles up like the absurdity of this journey has finally soaked through your skin. Someone helps you up. Their hands are filthy too. You don't say anything, you just nod. Because words are optional now. Mud is the new language. Later, as the sun tries to break through the clouds, fails, and sulks behind them, you notice something strange. Your hands no longer feel like yours. They've toughened. Blistered, yes, but steadier. Your back hurts, but it's a good ache. Earned. In the afternoon, you pause beside a small stream. It's clearer than you expect. Cool and sweet. You splash some on your face. It smells like stone and spring and the faint memory of better hygiene. You take a long drink and sit quietly. This is one of the rare moments when no one's talking. No one's shouting about ropes or rations, or how unfair it is that no one brought pie. Just the breeze, the burble of water, and a tiny cricket perched on your knee like it owns the world. In that moment, you remember something odd from one of those dusty guidebooks. Some believe that people who saw 3 crickets in one day were destined to reach Oregon safely. You glance around. 1. So far. You rejoin the group wagon creaking along behind you. The sun begins to set, casting golden light through the dust. It catches on the wagons like fire. Suddenly, everything glows like maybe this crazy journey might actually lead somewhere worth the blisters. You help set up camp again. You hammer stakes. You tie knots better this time. Dinner is burnt. Someone apologizes. No one cares. As night falls, you sit with your back to the wagon eyes on the stars once more. You name a few, even if they're wrong. You say, "That one's mine." It doesn't answer, but it listens. And somewhere, not far off, you hear a child whisper, "I saw a second cricket." You smile. 2. The sun rises differently out here. It doesn't burst onto the scene, it leaks in slow and gold, edging past the canvas flap of your wagon like a secret. You wake with a crick in your neck and a sore spot on your hip that you're 80% sure is a pebble and 20% sure is a beetle. Either way, you don't move right away. You just listen. There's the familiar snort of an ox, the thud of boots on damp earth, the low murmur of voices as the others begin to stir. Someone's already stoking a fire. You hear the clatter of tin cups, the scrape of spoons, the unmistakable clink of someone dropping the coffee pot lid for the 3rd time in 3 days. You drag yourself upright with the grace of a century-old turtle and shuffle outside. The world is brighter than it should be. Or maybe you're just not used to seeing it before washing your face or eating anything that didn't taste like disappointment. Your hands are stiff, your legs creak, but something in your chest, just behind the last rib on the left, feels a little steadier today. Someone hands you coffee. You nod grateful. It's hot, it's strong, it tastes like soot and maybe a little shoe leather, but it's warm, and that's more than enough. This morning's chore, reorganizing the wagon again. See, the Oregon Trail has its own laws of physics. For example, no matter where you put the flour sack, it will shift. If you wedge your boots under the bench, they will vanish. And if you pack the coffee too far back, someone will crawl over 3 barrels and fall into the salted pork trying to retrieve it. This is tradition. As you lift a heavy crate, something falls out a small wooden spinning top. Not yours? You pick it up, turn it over in your hand. There's a child nearby watching, eyes wide. You offer it back. They smile. It's missing its handle. They spin it anyway. It falls over instantly. They laugh. Some things don't have to work to still bring joy. Let's pause for a curious little side note, shall we? Historians estimate that on the real Oregon Trail, roughly 1 in 10 travelers didn't make it to the end. And while diseases like dysentery, our old friend cholera, and typhoid were the main culprits, accidents were common too. Wagons tipping, people falling under wheels, rivers sweeping away entire families. Grim, yes, but not every day was tragedy. There were games, birthdays, music, even weddings. One couple reportedly married under a tree surrounded by wagons and shared their cake made from flour bacon grease and crushed wild berries. Let that sink in. Bacon cake. You repack the wagon with more care this time. You fold the blanket tighter, wedge the biscuit tin where it won't rattle. You even use some leftover rope to tie a knot you're secretly proud of. It holds. For now, on the trail, the sun climbs higher. The prairie flattens out around you like an ocean without waves. Grasses sway in long ripples. There's no sound but the steady creak of wagons and the occasional cough. You pass a lone tree, the only one for miles. It's been struck by lightning split down the center. Someone mutters that it looks like a warning. You decide it looks more like resilience. You walk and walk. You didn't think there were this many shades of green, or that clouds could move that fast. Around midday, a shout goes up. Rest stop. It's not glamorous. A patch of shade beside a sluggish stream, a few logs someone dragged over. But it's the Ritz-Carlton of the prairie. You sit on a stump. You take off your boots. You inhale. And then you notice something odd. Your feet don't hurt as much today. They still hurt, but differently, like they've agreed to the terms of your journey, like they're saying, fine, we'll stay, but only if you soak us once a week. You splash water on your face, watch a dragonfly land on your sleeve. It stays for a heartbeat, then vanishes. The sky shifts as the afternoon wears on. The clouds gather thick and dark, but slow moving. Someone guesses rain. Another says maybe not. No one knows. You press on. Dust turns to grit. Your lips chap. You dream of oranges, not just the fruit, but the color. You imagine wrapping yourself in something bright and citrusy, a world without brown or gray. You vow to wear something ridiculous when you reach Oregon, maybe velvet or feathers. The wind picks up. You tighten your hat. The wagon cover flaps like nervous wings. The oxen lean forward, steady, determined. Horace and Margaret still unimpressed but dependable. By dusk, the world has quieted again. You reach a small rise and look back. The wagons stretch behind you like a ribbon made of tired people and tired wood. You sit at the edge of camp feet in the grass watching the stars appear one by one. Someone nearby plays a soft melody on a fiddle. It's off-key but gentle, a lullaby for the road. You glance at the child again, the one with the spinning top. They sit beside a woman, maybe their mother, maybe not, leaning against her shoulder. The top lies between them. She hums low and steady, and then just before you turn in for the night, you see it. Cricket number 3. It hops across your boot like a punctuation mark. You smile. 3. You wake up to thunder, not the sky kind. No lightning flashes or clouds rolling like drums overhead, just the very real, very immediate thunder of someone's oxen tearing loose from their tether and careening through camp like an indecisive cow tornado. You sit up fast, too fast. Your head thuds into the canvas ceiling, and for a moment the only stars you see are behind your eyes. Outside, someone yells, "Horace, no bad Horace," and your heart sinks. You scramble out of the wagon socks half on one boot, dangling from your hand. Margaret stands in place looking absolutely unbothered, but Horace is sprinting directly into someone's cook fire like he's training for the Ox Olympics. Dust rises. Someone drops a pan. A child starts crying. You chase him. Let it be known you are not fast. But desperation makes you nimble, and sheer embarrassment propels you past 3 wagons and a row of laundry as you finally grab the rope dangling from Horace's halter. He snorts. You pant. Someone applauds. You wish you were invisible. Eventually, calm returns. The oxen are retied. Breakfast is mostly salvageable if you like your biscuits with a hint of ash. You chew slowly, determined not to make eye contact with the person whose coffee pot now resembles modern art. But even in the chaos, there's a kind of camaraderie brewing. People are laughing not at you really, more at the absurdity of it all. One woman slaps your shoulder and says, "He's got spirit, just like you." You decide to take it as a compliment. Let's talk about oxen for a moment, shall we? Historically, oxen were far more popular than horses on the Oregon Trail. Why not? Because they were glamorous. Horses looked nicer, sure, but they spooked easily, cost more, and importantly, died more often. Oxen, on the other hand, were stubborn, slow, and sturdy. They didn't need fancy feed. They could eat prairie grass. And they could haul a fully loaded wagon while judging you silently with their big, wet eyes. They were in many ways the MVPs of manifest destiny. And yes, sometimes they stampeded through breakfast. Nobody's perfect. By midday, you're back on the trail. The sky has turned a crisp blue, the kind that looks like it was painted by someone with an expensive brush. The wind smells like dry grass and something sweet you can't name. The terrain is changing. Fewer trees now, more rolling hills. The road climbs just enough to make your calves ache. The wagon groans like it's protesting your life choices. Someone up ahead points to a rock formation. Chimney rock, they say, awe in their voice. You squint. It does sort of look like a chimney if chimneys were 300 feet tall and made entirely of defiance. It's a real landmark, one that hundreds of thousands saw and wrote about. Some carved their names into the soft rock. Others just stared, imagining it as a milestone, a marker that whispered, "You're getting somewhere." You wonder what you'll leave behind. Not a carving, probably. Maybe a story, maybe just boot prints. You crest a hill and see the wagon train spread below, curving like a long spine across the land. Dust rises behind it, soft and golden. For a moment, you feel like you're part of something bigger, a moving village, a living ribbon. Then the wind shifts and blows the dust directly into your face. You choke slightly on your poetic moment. At camp that night, the mood is lighter. Someone found wild onions and now there's stew. Real stew with flavor. People gather around to eat slowly, savoring every salty, oniony bite like it's a feast. You sit with your bow legs stretched toward the fire and think, this is almost comfort. Then someone says, "You ever wonder if we're lost?" The silence that follows is immediate and deep. You all glance at the guide. He shrugs. Define lost, he says. That does not help. But you don't argue. Not tonight. The stars are too bright and your belly is full. You're too tired to worry. Instead, you reach into your pocket and pull out a smooth stone. Not special, not shiny, just nice to hold. You roll it in your fingers. Think about the thousands who walked this same trail. How many of them also doubted the path? How many laughed when they could held their breath crossing? Rivers shouted at oxen, dreamed of oranges, probably all of them. You lie back, hands behind your head. The sky feels like a dome stitched with stars and lined with silence. And somewhere not far off, Horace snorts in his sleep. You smile. At least he's staying put tonight. The day begins with dust. You breathe it before you open your eyes, fine, chalky, ever-present. It sneaks into your nose, settles on your tongue, clings to your lashes. Even your dreams have a gritty texture now. In them you're walking, always thirsty, always dusty. When you sit up, the sky is already bright. No gentle pink or gold this morning, just a hard blue that makes everything look flat and far away. The fire is long dead. A few people are packing silently. Others sit with their knees pulled to their chests, waiting for their bodies to catch up to the day. You stretch. Everything creaks, including your spine. Someone offers you coffee, and you nod in thanks, though you'd rather have tea or lemonade or a large tub filled with clean water and exactly 40 lemons. But you drink what you're given, and then the real work begins. Yoke the oxen, load the wagon, tighten the ropes, untangle the wheels from last night's poor parking decisions. You do it all half asleep, your body moving more from memory than thought, and still the dust rises. Here's something people don't tell you about life on the Oregon Trail. You don't walk beside the wagon. You walk behind it, right in the dust cloud. Every step churns up more powder, more silt, more pieces of crushed prairie plants, and long-forgotten hoof prints. By midday, your clothes are beige. Your hair is beige. Even your shadow looks tired. You chew a piece of jerky and pretend it's bread, or pie, or literally anything else. It squeaks between your teeth like rubber. You swallow and try not to think too hard about what animal it used to be. Someone starts humming. You don't know the tune, but you hum along anyway. The sound bounces gently between the wagons, soft as wind through wheat. Then, without warning, your foot catches a rock, and down you go. It's not a graceful fall. There's no elegant twist or controlled descent. One moment, you're vertical. The next, your face is approximately 1 inch from the ground, and you are intimately reacquainted with the taste of trail dust. Someone gasps. Someone laughs. You groan. A hand reaches down. You take it. They pull you up. You both wobble for a second like newborn deer in ill-fitting boots. And then you both laugh. Hard. Because what else can you do? There's something about falling in front of people who are just as tired, just as filthy, just as achy as you are. It erases the awkwardness, turns it into a joke you're all in on. And just like that, you're walking again. Let's pause here for a strange but true fact. Some travelers walk the entire trail barefoot by choice. They believed that the soles of their feet would toughen faster and that shoes were too precious to waste on easy days. You glance down at your boots already worn thin. Maybe they had a point. Maybe they just had very high pain tolerance. By afternoon, the trail narrows. You're winding through gentle hills now green with patches of wildflowers. It's beautiful. In that way, you almost forget to appreciate because you're so focused on where to place your feet next. But then you stop, not because you're tired, you are. Not because Horace has stepped on someone's lunch again. He did. You stop because up ahead, stretching across the horizon, is a wagon. But not your wagon. This one's broken, abandoned. The canvas is torn. One wheel is shattered. A cooking pot lies half buried in the grass nearby. There's no one around. Just the silent echo of a story unfinished. You walk slowly past eyes tracing the outline of the wreck. Someone whispers, "Hope they made it." You nod. You don't say what you're thinking, that the odds weren't in their favor. There were thousands of these, you know. Wagons left behind like breadcrumbs for ghosts. Some travelers had to walk the rest of the way carrying what they could. Others turned back. A few stayed where they fell. It makes you think about your own wagon, the care you've taken, the knots you've tied, the ropes you've replaced. You reach out and pat the sideboard absently as you pass. Hold together, you murmur, just a little longer. That night, the stars come early. No clouds, no wind, just a sky so deep you feel like you could fall into it. You lie on your back, arms folded beneath your head. Someone passes around a tin of something sweet, hard candy, maybe. You suck on it slowly. The sugar is sharp and startling on your tongue. You think of the broken wagon again, of how quickly things can change, but also of how far you've come. And somewhere in the grass near your feet, a fourth cricket begins to sing. It starts with a creak, not the usual wagon axle groan or leather strap tug. This one is different. Long, slow, like the land itself is shifting in its sleep. You sit up blinking in the early light and realize your wagon is tilting, only slightly. Only enough to make your tin cup slide a few inches across the floorboards and fall out with a gentle plink. You crawl out and stand barefoot in the grass, rubbing your eyes. The wagon's parked on a slope. That wasn't intentional. You look around. The others are already stirring. Some are crouched in clusters staring at the ground. You follow their gaze. Ruts. Dozens of them. Deep, old, bone-dry ruts baked into the dirt like scars across the prairie. They twist and vanish into the horizon, evidence of those who came before. This is the trail, they say, the real trail, and it's not what you expected. You always imagined something more formal, a road perhaps, a well-worn path, something clear and obvious. Instead, it's a network of overlapping grooves and guesses, veering this way and that, like the land is trying to remember too many stories at once. You walk a little, tracing your fingers over the edge of one rut. It's hard, crumbly, worn down by generations of wooden wheels, hooves, boots, and bare feet. A quiet monument made of motion. Let's pause here for an oddly poetic, historical fact. Some wagon ruts are still visible today, carved so deeply into stone and soil that they've survived 2 centuries of wind and rain. The ground remembers even when the maps forget. You look back at your wagon. Margaret is staring at nothing. Horace is chewing something that may or may not be edible. Both seem profoundly unimpressed by history. The day stretches on. You walk, and then of course you walk some more. Around midday, the hills thicken. You're not climbing mountains yet, but the trail leans upward and your thighs start making quiet threats. The sun is intense today, no breeze. The world smells like dust and dried grass. Your water canteen sloshes half empty. Someone ahead calls out, "Snake!" Instant tension. Everyone freezes. You scan the grass heart, thudding. Then someone shouts again, laughing, "It's just a stick." You exhale, then immediately step over the stick anyway, just in case. But it does remind you snakes were a real concern on the trail. Not the massive movie kind, just small, clever, venomous ones. The kind that curled into boots or under blankets. Prairie rattlers mostly. Most bites weren't fatal, but they ruined your day and possibly your leg. Travelers learned to shake their shoes every morning. You do that now instinctively. Empty. Good. Later in the afternoon, you come to a stream, not wide, but fast. The wagons pause. People scout for the shallowest crossing. Oxen drink. You remove your boots and step in slowly. The water is a shock. Ice cold, clear, moving fast over stones that tickle your arches. You wade halfway across, arms out for balance, then crouch to splash your face. The sting of cold wakes every nerve in your skin. It feels like remembering something you didn't know you forgot. You stand there for a moment, eyes closed, listening to water, to birds, to laughter on the far bank, to someone shouting that Margaret has wandered off again. You wade back quickly. Once the wagons are across, you find a patch of shade under a bent cottonwood tree. You sit grateful. You chew a hard biscuit until it becomes something vaguely edible. You share a scrap of jerky with a dog that's followed the train since Kansas. No one knows who it belongs to. It just walks with you now like it has always walked with someone. You name it, biscuit. It wags its tail, once then curls at your feet. By evening, the landscape softens again. The hills roll downward, the horizon opens like a sigh. Grass glows gold, the wind cools. You reach camp tired, but not defeated. You eat stew that tastes better than it has any right to. You bandage a blister and pretend it's your only one. Someone plays a jaw harp by the fire. You laugh at how weird it sounds. They grin. Keep playing. As the sky darkens, a group gathers to talk. Not about dangers for once, about home, about where they came from. One man talks about St. Louis. A woman describes her grandmother's bakery. Someone else remembers a brass doorknob polished daily by their mother. It's strange, the things we miss. You listen quietly, then offer your own memory a window that stuck when it rained. The way the wood swelled and you had to jiggle it twice to open. Everyone nods. That's the kind of detail that matters out here. Not heroic, just real. When you finally lie down for the night, Biscuit curls beside you. Horace sighs in the dark. Somewhere an owl calls once low and soft. You drift off thinking about the ruts again, how they were made by ordinary wheels turning forward, always forward, and how you're now part of the groove they left behind. It rains all night, not a storm, not a dramatic, thunderous wagon-toppling deluge, just a quiet, relentless soaking rain, like the sky's trying to whisper something sad and can't quite get the words out. By morning, everything is damp. The grass, your blanket, your mood. You wake up with one side of your face pressed into a cold patch of canvas and a single drop of water clinging to the tip of your nose. You blink it away, sit up, and immediately feel it mud. It is everywhere. Under your boots, in your boots, inside the wagon, on your pants, despite your best efforts. Even the dog-faithful Muddy Biscuit is more swamp than fur this morning. Breakfast is eaten standing up because nothing is dry enough to sit on. The biscuits are soggy. The beans taste like rain. Someone mutters, "At least the dust is gone," and no one laughs. The trail today is less path and more sludge runway. The wagons move slowly, wheels groaning with each revolution. You walk beside yours, slipping every few steps, gripping the sideboard like it's the only polite thing keeping you from becoming a mud sculpture. Horace doesn't seem to mind. Margaret glares at Puddles like she might challenge one to a fight. You'd help her. The strange thing is, this should feel miserable, and part of it does. But another part of you, a part that's been slowly waking since the journey began, feels oddly calm, because no one can fake it in the mud. Not the guide, not the preachers, not the fancy fellow with the gold watch who used to complain about the food he's currently on his hands and knees, digging his boot out of a puddle with a spoon. The trail has a way of equalizing people, a historical tidbit that fits this moment perfectly. Even famous expeditions got stuck in mud. In 1849, a group of overzealous gold seekers tried to push their wagons forward after heavy rain and got so stuck they had to unload everything, including the stove, and carry their supplies piece by piece over 3 miles of muck. The moral: sometimes the only way forward is very, very slowly. Your pace today, slower than a suspicious squirrel. You pass patches of prairie turned into tiny lakes, each reflecting a gray sky and the general mood of wet socks. You've stopped trying to avoid puddles. Now it's more of a controlled splash strategy. Someone behind you starts singing again. This time, it's a song about frogs. The chorus is just croaking noises. You don't know whether to be annoyed or entertained. You settle on both. Around midday, the sun tries to come out. A few brave beams pierce the clouds, landing like blessings on shoulders and soggy hats. People pause, faces tilted upward. Even the oxen stop chewing for a second. The light doesn't last, but it helps. As the day wears on, the mud thins. The trail firms beneath your boots. You can feel the change in your stride. A little more spring, a little less squish. You pass a stand of trees, unexpected tall rustling. Someone calls it a forest, though it's more like a polite cluster of trunks. Still, it feels like progress. There's a clearing nearby. The guide calls for camp early today. No one argues. You find a flat spot blessedly dry and drop your pack with a thud. You sit. You don't get up for a long time. Dinner is humble. More stew, more biscuits, and one glorious pot of tea made from foraged mint leaves. It's the best thing you've tasted in days, possibly ever. Someone tells a story about a wagon wheel that popped off mid-hill and rolled straight into a cow. The cow wasn't hurt, just surprised. You laugh so hard your ribs hurt. You're starting to like these people. You never expected that. As the fire dims, you watch someone, maybe 16, maybe 20, pull out a tiny carved bird. It's no bigger than your thumb, made of wood and patience. They spin it gently between their fingers, then pass it to the next person. No words, just passing. You hold it for a moment, then pass it on. This too is part of the trail, the quiet sharing of small things. When you finally crawl under your blanket, the ground feels softer. Maybe it's the grass. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're not resisting it so much anymore. You fall asleep with damp socks, a minty aftertaste, and the image of that carved bird dancing through your thoughts. And just before sleep takes you completely, you think, today, no one cried, no one yelled, no one broke anything. That counts as a victory. You wake to the smell of smoke, but the good kind. Not fire, not danger. Just the low, warm scent of someone actually cooking something with intention. Something smoky. Something that doesn't involve rehydrated beans or despair in gravy form. You sit up fast enough to regret it. Your neck protests. Your shoulders mutter curses. But your nose leads you forward past snoring wagons and a sunrise that looks like spilled egg yolk across the sky. Someone's roasting bacon, real bacon, the kind that sizzles. You haven't seen meat with that much fat since Missouri. You don't ask where they got it. You just nod solemnly like you're witnessing a miracle. Breakfast feels different today. People are smiling more, joking. Someone's even brushing their hair. You join the general sense of optimism with your last pair of semi-clean socks and a handful of dried apples that taste vaguely like cardboard, soaked in memories. And then, just as you're tightening the yoke on Horace and Margaret, boom! Not thunder, not gunfire, just something exploding with great enthusiasm somewhere off to the left. Everyone freezes, heads turn. A thin plume of smoke rises from behind a small hill. Someone yells, "I think it was the wheel grease." A few people run, others stroll. You jog, curious, cautious, until you reach the source. A smoldering pile of what used to be someone's attempt at a portable stove. Turns out bacon grease is flammable. The good news? No one's hurt. The bad news? No more bacon. The wagon owner stands beside the wreckage covered in soot, holding a half-burned spoon like a war trophy. Well, he says, "Guess it's beans again." You all clap politely. What else can you do? The trail is nothing if not an ongoing comedy of errors. Let's pause for a truly odd historical aside. Some pioneers attempted to bring cast iron stoves with them. They weighed several hundred pounds, cracked easily, and often had to be abandoned at the first river crossing. Still, people tried, because comfort is a hard thing to let go of, even when it's impractical and made of iron. You return to your wagon with a new appreciation for cold jerky. At least it doesn't explode. The trail is wide today, flat. The sky stretches endlessly above a pale blue quilt without stitches. You walk with rhythm now, like your legs have joined some internal drumbeat. Step, step, breathe. Step, step, check the oxen. Step, step, squint into the distance like you might spot Oregon around the next bend. You don't, but you do see something else. Ruts again. Deep ones. Stone carved this time. Permanent. Like fossilized wagon bones. You stop for a while, running your hand through one. The grooves are smooth, worn by decades of wheels. You think about all the people who passed this way, before the ones who made it, the ones who didn't, the ones who left pieces of themselves, a shoe, a dream, a stove in the dirt. You keep walking. Sometime afternoon, the guide calls a halt. Not for danger, not for weather, but because there's a meadow. That's it, a meadow. Green, wide, peppered with wildflowers. No trees, no rocks, just a place to be for a little while. People sit, some lie back in the grass. One man takes off his boots and sighs like he's just discovered paradise. A woman nearby braids her daughter's hair. Someone hums You lie down and let the breeze pass over your face like a soft hand. You almost forget you're on a journey, but eventually you move again because the trail doesn't wait. Later, the land rises into gentle hills. The climb is slow but steady. The oxen grunt more. You hear the creak of wood under strain, the muttered encouragements from drivers who love their animals but won't admit it. The wind picks up at the crest, cool, dry, and then you see them, mountains, far off, faint, blue with distance, but there, the Rockies. You've heard of them your whole life, and now they're not stories or shapes on a map, they're real, tall, inevitable. They sit on the horizon like guardians, or obstacles, or both. Someone whispers, "We're really doing it." Someone else says, "We're not even halfway." You all go quiet. That night at camp, you don't speak much, not because of fear, but because the mountains demand silence, like they're listening. You eat in near dark. The stew is bland, the stars are sharp. You hold your cup of water with both hands and sip slowly. When you lie down, you don't dream of home. You dream of cliffs, of cold air, of standing at the top of something vast and old and whispering. You don't know what's waiting in those mountains, but you know with quiet certainty you're going to climb them. There's a new sound this morning. Not bird song, though. There's some of that light and hesitant, as if even the birds are unsure about the terrain ahead. No, this sound is deeper. It's the wind, and not just any wind, but mountain wind. It rolls down the slopes in long invisible rivers, whistling through every crack in the wagon and every loose thread on your coat. It makes the canvas flap like a sail on a ship that forgot the sea. You huddle deeper into your blanket, not quite ready to emerge. But the cold finds you anyway, like it has your name on a list. Eventually, you rise. Your boots are stiff. Your breath fogs. Margaret gives you a look that says, "This again." Horace just snorts and steps on your foot. You're officially in the foothills now. The land has texture, rise and fall, soft green, giving way to sharp rock. The trail curves like a lazy snake. What was once a flat path is now a guessing game of inclines and gravel. The wagons groan more, so do you. Every step today is an effort. You're not climbing yet, not really, but the air already feels thinner, like someone took the top half of your lungs while you slept. You keep going anyway, because no one stops out here, not for long. Let's talk for a moment about gravity, that rude little constant that becomes a loud companion on the trail. Uphill, it pulls your wagon back with all the stubbornness of a toddler who doesn't want to leave the fair. Every inch feels like a negotiation. You lean into the pull legs, straining shoulders aching. You curse gravity. You curse the slope. You curse the person who packed a piano in wagon 3. Yes, that really happened. Someone once tried to bring a piano across the Rockies. They made it 10 days. Then, after an hour of huffing and pushing and sliding on loose rock, you reach a ledge and you see everything. Below the winding trail you conquered, above endless ridges stacked like waves frozen mid-crash, around sky, and more sky. The wind lifts your hair, your lungs burn, but you grin. You earned this view with your thighs. The rest stop is brief. Someone says, "Let's not die today." You all nod. That's the plan. As you begin the descent into the next hollow, you learn an unpleasant truth. Going downhill is worse. The wagon wants to run. The oxen try to slow it. You try not to be crushed between enthusiasm and momentum. Your boots slip, your knees wobble. Margaret digs in her hooves like she's auditioning for a sled team. At the bottom, you're sweaty and dusty and grateful to be alive. You sit on a rock and shout into the trees just to hear your own voice bounce back. It does, quietly. Echoes feel different out here, like the mountains are thinking it over before answering. You pass the afternoon picking your way through narrow passes, the trail sometimes no wider than your wagon. You wonder what would happen if you tipped. You quickly stop wondering. Instead, you focus on the smells, pine stone. Something faintly metallic, maybe the scent of old mining tools buried somewhere nearby. In one spot, you find bones, animal you hope, a rib cage half buried, clean, bleached by time and sun. You don't mention it to anyone. You just walk a little faster. By evening, the camp is smaller, tighter. You huddle closer to others. The fire is brighter, the laughter is louder, not because the day was funny, but because it wasn't. You eat quietly. A stew made with something someone swears was rabbit. You don't question it, you're too tired. Across the fire, someone is sewing. Their fingers move fast, even in low light, a small tear in a coat being closed stitch by stitch. You watch, mesmerized. You think about how much of this journey is repair. Repairing wagons, shoes, moods, beliefs. Even now, someone's mending something. And it makes you feel oddly safe. When you curl up for the night, you can feel the mountains at your back. Not looming, not menacing, just present, solid and unmoved. You fall asleep to the sound of the wind through pine, and you dream not of home, not of Oregon, but of standing on a peak and letting the trail fall away beneath your feet like a story you've survived just long enough to start telling. This morning, your breath fogs in the air before you say a word. It curls up in little ghost puffs like your body is quietly whispering. Are you sure you want to do this again? You answer by standing up, slowly, carefully. Everything aches, your thighs, your calves, a few muscles you didn't know you owned. Even your eyelids feel heavy, but the mountain doesn't care. So you lace your boots, you rub warmth back into your fingers. You slap the side of the wagon like it's a friend who owes you money. And you move. Today is the climb. Not a gentle uphill, not a polite incline, a real climb. The kind where you lean forward just to stay upright. The kind where the wagon wheels slip and scrape over rocks and everyone has to work together just to move a few feet. Margaret refuses to go first. Horace tries to eat a bush. It's going great. The path narrows to little more than a suggestion. Sharp drops wait just beyond the trail's edge. You focus on your boots. One step, then another. You don't look down. No one talks much. The air is thinner here, the work heavier. Your lungs pull each breath like it's an argument. The oxen grunt with every movement. The rocks beneath your feet shift and clatter. The wagon wobbles dangerously more than once. A wheel jolts in a rut, and everyone flinches. Someone whispers something that might be a prayer. And still you keep climbing. Let's pause to appreciate a sobering little truth. The South Pass through the Rockies was one of the only ways wagons could cross at all. It wasn't a cliff or a single mountain peak. It was a high plain. Still difficult, still dangerous, but wide enough to let wagons through without ropes, pulleys, or mountain goats trained in engineering. Even so, It was no stroll in the park, especially with 2,000 pounds of wagon and 2 stubborn oxen. By mid-morning, you reach a spot of relative flatness. You drop your pack and sit on a warm rock hard, hammering in your ears. Around you, others do the same. One person is crying quietly. No one says anything. It's not sadness or even pain. It's just release. You sip from your canteen. The water tastes like metal and sky. Someone hands you a strip of dried apple. It's tough, but sweet. You eat slowly, chewing until it disappears. Far below the world stretches out like a memory the path you took. The river bends the endless brown and gold of the plains. You can't believe you walked all that. You can't believe there's more. A small bird lands nearby, brown and plain. It hops, once gives you a look and flies away. You envy it just a little. Then the wind picks up and you stand again. There's no going back, only forward. The descent is not kind. Your knees wobble, your toes jam forward in your boots, and the wagon jerks like it's trying to throw itself down the mountain out of spite. Everyone moves slower, more carefully. One wagon ahead loses its footing, slides sideways a few feet with a scream of wood and metal. You all stop. Wait, it stabilizes. Barely. Everyone exhales. You keep going. At the base, the land flattens again just enough for camp. Someone sings while setting up the fire, a real song with verses and everything. It's a lullaby maybe, or an old hymn. You don't recognize it, but the tune sits gently in your chest like a soft weight. Dinner is beans again, but someone found wild garlic, and that makes all the difference. You sit with your back against a boulder, boots off, feet aching but intact. You made it over the pass, through the worst part, or so you hope. Across the fire, someone pulls out a harmonica. They try to play. It sounds like a goose being stepped on. Everyone laughs, even the player. It's a good laugh, real belly deep, no sarcasm. The kind that leaves your ribs sore, but your soul a little lighter. The stars tonight are clear and cold. The moon hangs low, like it's eavesdropping. You lie back, hands behind your head, and think of home. Not with sadness. Not exactly. More like remembering the part of a story where the hero hasn't quite become the hero yet. You close your eyes. The fire crackles. Someone hums. Biscuit snores. And in your sleep, you dream of the trail ahead, winding endless unknown. And of yourself still walking, still going, still becoming. You wake with frost on your blanket. It's thin, delicate, barely there, but enough to turn your breath into tiny clouds and your fingers into stiff versions of themselves. You sit up slowly, blinking at a world painted in pale blue. The mountains are behind you, now crouched on the horizon like old giants. Ahead lies the valley. You've entered the high desert, and it is quiet. Not silent exactly. There's the creak of wagons, the occasional grunt from Horace, someone muttering about coffee grounds. But it's a thin, quiet-like sound itself is being rationed. You miss the rustle of trees, the snap of twigs, the way birds used to complain every morning. Now there's wind, dust, sky, and space. So much space. You start the day layered in every scrap of clothing you own. By noon, you've peeled half of it off. The sun doesn't rise here, it declares itself. And once it's up, it makes no apologies. The dry air saps your sweat, before you even feel it. The back of your neck burns, your lips crack. You drink carefully, trying not to burn through your water too quickly. Because here water means everything. Let's pause for one of those trail truths that hit harder than expected. More pioneers died of dehydration than most history books admit. It wasn't always dramatic, no swooning in the dust, just slow fatigue, confusion, mouths too dry to speak, and the cruel irony, sometimes there was water brackish, salty, poisoned by minerals or animal remains. It shimmered like hope, then turned bitter in your mouth. You think of this now, as someone ahead yells, "Spring." You pick up the pace. A trickle, barely more than a wet stain in the rocks, winds its way down a shallow gully. People drop to their knees to fill canteens, soak cloths, splash faces. You wait your turn patient. When you finally kneel, you press your hands into the water and just hold them there, cold, real. You fill your flask, you smile, it's enough, until it's not. Because 2 hours later, Margaret stops. Just stops. She doesn't lie down. She doesn't collapse dramatically. She just plants her hooves in the dirt and refuses to move. Horace snorts and keeps walking until the yoke jerks him back. Now both oxen are annoyed. You try coaxing, patting, speaking gently. You try bribing her with a piece of carrot someone saved from yesterday's stew. She chews it, then sits. Yes, sits. You didn't even know oxen could sit like that. She looks proud of herself. You are less impressed. People pass you with sympathetic looks. Someone offers help. You wave them on. Eventually, Margaret stands stretching like she just returned from vacation. You roll your eyes and whisper, "Diva." She flicks her tail in agreement. The trail continues. Toward evening, the land flattens again. But this time, it feels endless in a different way. Not like freedom, more like emptiness. The sun sets without ceremony, just sinking into the dust like it gave up. Camp is quiet. Everyone is tired in that bone-deep way that goes beyond muscles. You chew a piece of hardtack that may or may not be older than you are. You don't talk much. No one does. But someone lights a small fire. Someone else pulls out a book, half-burned pages curled, but still legible. They read aloud, not loudly, just enough to reach the people nearby. It's not scripture, not a journal, just a story about a man and a dog in a city far away. You listen with your eyes closed. You don't care what it's about. It's language, it's fiction, it's a voice not warning or planning or counting rations. It's someone imagining. You fall asleep with that voice in your ears and the desert wind in your hair. The sky above you is bigger than any sky you've known, and for the first time in a while, you don't dream of walking. You dream of riding. The trail surprises you today. Not with beauty, though. There's plenty of that in the way the sun hits the cliffs just right, or the way a lizard darts across your path like a scribble come to life. No, the surprise is in the sound, because sometime around mid-morning, you hear laughter, not the tired chuckle of someone who's just stepped in something unpleasant, or the sarcastic snort of someone whose dinner caught fire. Real laughter, bright, sudden, uncontained. You follow the sound and find a small group crowded around a man holding a fiddle. He's standing on a crate, playing a fast, ridiculous tune with the sort of wild abandon usually reserved for toddlers and lightning. His bow squeaks. His fingers fly. He's terrible, but glorious. You can't help it, you laugh too. It bubbles out of you like something you didn't know was still inside. Someone claps along, someone else tries to dance and nearly trips over a bedroll. A baby shrieks with joy. Even Horace blinks twice and flicks his ears, which you choose to interpret as applause. In that moment, the trail feels less like a test and more like a festival. It lasts 10 minutes. Then the man drops his fiddle bows dramatically and announces, "That's all the joy I've got, folks. You cheer anyway." He limps back to his wagon, grinning, because joy is rare out here, and rare things deserve applause. Let's take a moment for a truth that's as soft as it is serious. Survival on the trail wasn't just about food or water or clean socks. It was about morale. Laughter wasn't a luxury, it was a tool. One study of pioneer diaries notes that jokes, bad ones especially, show up in the worst weeks, as if humor filled in the cracks where courage wore thin. You think about that as you walk feet sore but heart lighter. The land today rolls in golden waves, short stubborn grasses, dry gullies, no trees. The sun is a lid pressing down gently, persistently. Your hat feels too thin, your shirt clings, your skin smells like dust and ambition. You pass another abandoned wagon. This one is mostly intact, still upright canvas flapping slightly. There's a broken chair nearby, and a teacup, whole, still sitting on a rock like someone meant to return. No note, no sign, just the suggestion of a pause that became permanent. You keep walking. Later, the trail narrows through a canyon. Stone walls rise on either side, and the air changes cooler, echoing. You hear the wagons behind you like ghosts, wood creaking wheels clicking over stones, the low murmur of voices. You feel small, but not afraid. It's strange how the canyon makes things quiet and loud at the same time. Your own breathing sounds like wind. Your footsteps seem theatrical. The oxen's hooves make music on the stone. Then the smell hits. You wrinkle your nose. Someone ahead yells, "Watch out, buffalo carcass." Sure enough, just beyond a bend, the trail winds around a great mound of fur and bone. Dead, days old. You hold your breath. So does everyone else. A few buzzards sit on a ledge above eyeing you like they've got time. You press on. That night, camp is set in a rocky basin. No firewood here, just stones and scrub. People share what they've got, burn a few sticks, dig out extra candles. You eat cold beans. No one complains, because tonight the stars are outrageous. They spill across the sky like someone tore a hole in the universe and let the light pour in. You lie on your back, mouth open, blinking at constellations you can't name and don't care to. A girl nearby, maybe 10 points upward, and says, "That one's mine." No one argues. She claimed it fair and square. You smile. Not because it's funny or sweet or even surprising, but because you were about to say the same thing. You close your eyes. Let the silence fold over you. Let the starlight settle on your skin like snow that forgot to be cold. And you think today was good. The dust today is meaner, not in quantity, there's always dust, but in attitude. It clings tighter, stings harder, gets in places you didn't know were places. You feel it between your teeth, in the folds of your sleeves, nestled deep into your eyebrows like it's trying to move in long term. You spit once. It makes no difference. The oxen trudge onward. Their hooves puff little mushroom clouds of grit with every step. You walk behind them as usual, silently composing an emotional breakup letter to the trail in your head. Dear Oregon Trail, it's not me, it's definitely you. Please stop writing. Respectfully, a human dust mop. No one's in a talking mood today. You pass a few travelers with blank expressions, their gazes fixed on the horizon like it owes them an apology. The only real sound is the rhythmic clatter of wheels, the soft swish of fabric rubbing against chapped skin, and the occasional motivational grunt from Horace, who remains blissfully unaware of your growing existential crisis. You come upon another grave. It's marked with a pile of stones, a small cross made of sticks. No name, no story. Just a place where someone stopped and didn't start again. You pause, remove your hat, not out of ceremony but instinct. Someone behind you whispers, "They say the wind here remembers names." You don't know if that's true, but you hope so. Let's pause gently for a hard but honest truth. It's estimated that one grave was left behind every 80 yards along the Oregon Trail, most unmarked, most forgotten, not because people didn't care, but because there was no time, no tools, no strength left. The trail demanded everything, even grief had to be efficient. You walk on, silently, respectfully. By midday, the heat returns, not fiery, not blazing, just constant, like being gently baked inside your own clothes. You begin to feel like bread someone forgot to finish making. Your water tastes like leather. Your jerky tastes like rope. You chew anyway. Then a miracle, not of faith or fire or falling stars, a real miracle. You see a tree, a real one, not a bush pretending, not a stick poking out of sand, a full-grown, shade-throwing, leaf-rustling, bird-nesting tree. Everyone stops. It's unspoken, unanimous. Someone kneels. Someone else sobs quietly, face buried in their hands. One child claps like the tree is a performer. You lean against it and close your eyes. It's cool. It's real. It smells like green. You rest there a while. And when you move on, you leave behind a tiny offering, a flat stone, a button, a sprig of mint. No one speaks of it, but everyone contributes. Later, a man near the back of the train collapses. He doesn't fall dramatically, just crumples slow and final. You rush over. His wife is already there, eyes wide, mouth silent. You check for breath. There is one. Weak, faint, heat stroke, dehydration, maybe both. Someone produces willow bark tea. Someone else fans his face. You pour a little water on a cloth and press it to his forehead. His lips twitch. His eyes flutter. He lives for now. You learn a new rule, even the strong fall here. Even the silent need help. At camp, people move more slowly, carefully. The man who collapsed lies under a blanket. His wife sits beside him, holding his hand. You offer them a little honey from your rations. She nods, says nothing. You understand. That night, no one sings. But someone hums a low, steady sound not tied to any tune. A mother rocks a baby who will not sleep. You sit nearby, staring into a fire too small for the cold creeping in. The stars are gone tonight, hidden, a ceiling instead of a sky. You feel it. Everyone does. You close your eyes anyway. You're tired, but you're not broken. And tomorrow, dust or no, you'll walk again. Because that's what the trail asks. Not perfection, just one more day. The trail is strangely beautiful today. You almost don't notice at first. The same dirt underfoot, the same creaking wagon behind, the same oxen, one stubborn, one confused. Your boots still pinch, your skin still itches. Your canteen is still half full, half warm, and entirely unsatisfying. But then you crest a low ridge, and there it is, light everywhere. The sun is rising behind a layer of distant haze, turning the valley below into a bowl of gold and gray and dream. Thin clouds float like pulled wool. Shadows stretch long and soft across the earth. The air smells like dew and distant pine. For a moment, the trail doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like promise. You stop. Everyone does. Some people gasp. Some just blink. You feel your shoulders ease just a little. Your fingers unclench. Even Horace lets out a sigh that could be interpreted as poetic appreciation. Margaret chews something thoughtfully and ignores the moment entirely. Then someone mutters, "Let's not waste the light," and the spell breaks. But not completely, because even as you walk something inside, you has shifted. Just a fraction, just enough. Let's linger here gently on a truth often lost in the dust. The trail was not all suffering. There were moments, brief, quiet, unrecorded, of real joy. A flower blooming where no one expected. A bird that followed the wagons for days. A perfectly round rock. A joke told at just the right time. These didn't make the history books, but they made the history bearable. Today that joy takes the form of a squirrel. It appears mid-morning, darting across the trail with reckless glee. Someone shouts, "Supper," and gives chase, but no one serious. You watch it scramble up a rock tail, twitching like a question mark. It stares back, then vanishes. The child walking next to you says, "It winked at me." You say, "You must be very important." They nod solemnly. "I am." The trail widens. You walk 3 across, now boots kicking up powdery dust that hangs in the air like breath. You talk more than usual, about nothing mostly. Food you miss, pets left behind, dreams you've had. One man swears he dreamed of an ocean made of soup. He doesn't specify the flavor. By midday, you reach a fork. 2 paths, one rocky narrow high, the other lower, longer, flatter, but with rumors of water scarcity. You gather to decide. Everyone has an opinion, some loud, some reasoned, some mostly based on how much they hate climbing. Eventually, the guide votes for the high road. "Better view," he says. So up you go, and it's hard. Not as hard as the mountains, but close. Your legs ache in familiar ways. You slip more, the air bites, your lungs heave. At one point, the wagon catches on a jagged boulder, and you spend half an hour trying to realign the axle with a rock of prayer and Margaret's impressive shoulder strength. But when you reach the top, you understand. The world unfurls. Miles of valley painted in late summer tones. Rivers glint like silver thread. Distant herds of bison move like shadows. There's a silence here that feels less like absence and more like reverence. You sit, you drink what little water you have left. You chew a stale biscuit, and it tastes fine. Better than fine, because you're here, alive. Later, as the sun drops and camp is made, in the lee of the ridge, someone starts drawing. With charcoal from the fire and the back of a packing list, they sketch the view. It's rough, wobbly, childlike, but it captures the shape of the valley, the curves of the hills, the angle of light. People gather around, point, nod, smile. Someone tears a strip of fabric and ties it to a stick. For the view, they say. They plant it gently in the ground near the highest rock, a trail flag. Not a marker of conquest, but of having been here. You fall asleep that night with sore legs, a bruised palm, and a full heart. Not because the trail is easy, it isn't, but because today it felt worth it. You dream of rain, not the cold kind or the muddy soul-soaking kind, but a warm, steady drizzle on a tin roof. A comforting sound, rhythmic and safe. When you wake, you still hear it, except there is no rain, just someone frying something in a pan. You sit up quickly, heart skipping. Could it be something hot? Something with crisp edges? You crawl from your blanket, following the smell like a hopeful dog. A woman near the fire is cooking thin cakes in a skillet. She flips one golden and lopsided. A few kids are already gathered around her like bees around a miracle. You hover nearby polite. She notices, one. You nod so fast your neck cracks. It's hot, barely sweet, a little burned. It is quite possibly the best thing you've ever eaten. The trail is quieter today, in that Sunday morning kind of way. The rhythm is slower. People speak in softer voices. Even the oxen seem less irritated. Horace only tries to walk sideways once. Margaret lets a butterfly land on her nose. There are no big hills today, no wild winds, just a long, gentle curve through open land. It gives you time to think about things you've forgotten, the way shoes used to feel new, the hum of street lamps, the weight of silence after a dinner bell, how your mother used to sing when no one was listening. You don't miss the things exactly, but they come back now like distant friends waving from across a river. Someone ahead finds a piece of pottery, just a shard, buried near a dry wash. Smooth, painted with a spiral of faded blue. They hold it up like treasure. The guide says it's ancient native, most likely. The person nods, brushes the dust gently, then places it on a rock where others can see. No one pockets it. That feels wrong. Let's take a respectful pause for a truth rarely whispered in trail stories. The pioneers weren't the first. The land was already walked, already named, already lived in. Long before wagons, there were footsteps, quiet, skilled, full of knowledge. Most settlers never stopped long enough to learn. The trail doesn't start with you. It never did. By afternoon, the wind shifts, brings the scent of sage, of wild mint, of dry earth, warmed by sun. You walk with it. You let it carry you. A boy beside you tells you he wants to be a map maker. You ask why. He shrugs. I just want to make the world make sense. You nod. That's fair. Camp that night is beside a dry creek bed. Someone says it ran full last spring. Another swears they caught trout here 5 years ago. Now it's dust and memories. Still, you set up nearby. There's shade, flat ground. Someone finds a scorpion under their blanket, but it's quickly evicted with a boot and a prayer. Dinner is shared again. Salt pork, hard bread. Someone passes around a tiny jar of plum preserves. Everyone gets a fingerful. It disappears fast, but the taste lingers like a secret. As the fire dies down, someone reads again. This time from a letter. Old Christ probably read 100 times. They don't say who it's from, just that it's real and warm and worth sharing. Lines about home, about laundry hanging in wind, about a pie that didn't set properly. Nothing grand, nothing tragic, just ordinary life. You listen, eyes closed. The words settle around you like a second blanket. Tonight, there are no stars, only the glow of coals, only breathing, only one more day behind you, and whatever waits, one more ahead. And in this moment, that's enough. This morning, your legs refuse to cooperate. You sit up, but your knees creak like old floorboards, and your ankles immediately protest the notion of standing. For a full minute, you just sit there blinking at the inside of your wagon, wondering how many bones in the human body are allowed to ache at once. Apparently, all of them. Eventually, you stand. Slowly, carefully, like someone older than you are and wiser than you feel. The sky is a pale gray, and the light has that early morning hesitation that makes you unsure whether it's sunrise or just the world thinking about it. You step outside and breathe deep. Cold, dry, sage and dust. Someone's already boiling water. The smell of chicory coffee drifts through camp, bitter and earthy. You nod to the man stirring it. He nods back. No words needed. You both just exist there for a minute, two strangers bound by tiredness and gratitude for hot liquid. The trail calls soon after, and it's not kind today. Flat, but cracked. A patchwork of dried mud and brittle weeds. You walk like a ship on a rough sea, shifting, adjusting, avoiding holes you're not sure are holes, until you're already in them. One wagon hits a rut and jerks sideways. Everyone flinches. It rights itself. Barely. The landscape is changing again. Less green now, more yellows, more browns, more space. You could yell and not hear an echo. You could cry and no one would see. It's beautiful in that lonesome kind of way, and it makes you feel small, but not in a bad way. You pass an old animal skull, maybe cow, maybe buffalo. It stares at the sky like it's still waiting for rain. A child nearby asks, "Was it buried?" And their mother answers, "No, just forgotten." You think about that for a while. Let's stop here gently with a curious historical side note. Many families abandoned heirlooms out here. China sets, grandfather clocks, heavy Bibles. Not because they didn't care, but because they couldn't carry everything. Every extra pound was a choice, a quilt or a barrel of flour, a mirror or another yoke. The trail didn't just strip away comfort, it stripped away identity. What do you keep when everything costs you your body? You look down at your own bag. Fewer things now. One shirt, a spoon, a button from someone else's coat. But somehow, you feel heavier, like you collected something invisible, maybe grit, maybe grief, maybe both. By midday, the sun is out in full, and it is unforgiving. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. Your boots rub raw in new places. Even Horace looks annoyed, and Horace doesn't do feelings. Margaret walks with her head low, ears flat. You rub her neck as you pass. She leans into it, just a little. That small moment stays with you. Later, someone finds a patch of water, not much, just a shallow dip with reeds and bugs and the faint promise of maybe. People rush forward, then hesitate. Someone scoops a cupful, tastes, spits, too salty. You water the oxen anyway. They need it more than you do. Camp tonight is tired. No songs, just work. Someone burns the beans. No one cares. You chew them in silence, grateful for something warm, even if it tastes like regret. Across from you, a young couple sits close, too tired to flirt, too sore to lean, but their hands find each other under the blanket, just fingers touching, that's all. And it's enough. You lie down early, stars overhead, cold creeping in again. You tug your blanket up and feel the trail settle into your bones. You are sore, dry, bruised, quiet, but also still here, still walking, still carrying the little pieces of today that didn't break you. There's something different in the air this morning. You notice it before your eyes are fully open. It's subtle, cooler, lighter, the kind of breeze that doesn't just pass over you, but invites you to breathe deeper. You sit up and realize the dust has settled. Just for a moment, the world feels clean. You step out into a dawn that looks like it's been washed. The sky is soft rose and pale silver, and the horizon stretches farther than it did yesterday, as if distance has decided to relax its grip. Margaret snorts quietly. Horace is already chewing a piece of rope that was not his to chew. You don't even stop him. This is his way of preparing for the day, and honestly, you respect the ritual. The wagons roll out slower this morning, not because people are tired, they always are, but because the road ahead is uncertain. You're entering a new stretch. The guide calls it the Alkali Flats, which sounds almost poetic until you're in them. The ground is pale, almost white in places, cracked like old porcelain. It crunches underfoot, but not like dry leaves or gravel. It's softer, stranger, as if the earth forgot how to hold itself together. And then there's the taste. At first, you think it's just the air, but after a while, it's in your mouth. A bitter chemical tang, like licking a penny that's been left in the sun. Your tongue feels dry. Your throat scratches. You drink from your canteen, but the taste lingers. Someone mutters alkali sickness like it's a ghost story. You've heard of it. Water that looks clean but isn't. Salt and minerals that can rot the gut from the inside out. People once died after finding water because they trusted the wrong puddle. So today you ration, even more than usual. No washing, no long sips. You wet your lips, and that's enough. Let's pause carefully for a fact that gets buried under stories of snake bites and broken wagons. Dehydration wasn't always visible. People didn't faint dramatically. They just slowed down, stopped sweating, started staring too long at nothing. Sometimes they walked for hours after the damage had already been done. By the time they fell, it was too late. You remember that as you watch a boy ahead stumble. His father catches him, lifts him onto the wagon seat. His lips are pale. The mother holds a wet rag to his forehead. He doesn't speak, just leans into her small and quiet. You walk a little faster after that, just to feel your heartbeat. By midday, the heat has returned, bouncing off the pale ground in waves that shimmer and lie. You lose sight of the trail more than once. The ruts fade here, no trees, no landmarks, only direction and hope. Someone behind you begins humming again. Not a tune, just sound, a way to keep rhythm. You join in softly. Others pick it up. Soon there's a strange song of low voices moving through the flats. No words, just vibration. A trick to keep walking. The flats go on forever, but eventually, mercifully, they end. At the edge, a rise. Barely a hill, but it feels like a mountain after so much sameness. You scramble up, and at the top, there it is, green, faint, far, but real. Grasses, a trickle of water glinting between rocks, the sound of insects alive and loud. Someone drops to their knees and weeps. Someone else just lies back in the grass, arms out, like they've finally been forgiven. You drink carefully, slowly. The water is sweet, cool, honest. Camp is made without instruction. People know when to rest. Dinner is quiet, but not heavy. There's laughter, a few stories. One man insists he saw a bear. Everyone doubts him, but they let him have his moment. Later, a girl paints her name on a stone using berry juice. She presses a palm next to it. Her brother does the same. They place the stone beside the trail facing west. "I want Oregon to know who we are," she says, and you think it already does. That night, you fall asleep faster than usual, wrapped in the smell of green things, crickets chirping, water moving softly nearby. You dream of nothing and wake feeling more whole than you have in weeks. You dream of your own bed, the creak of it, the way the sheets felt cool only for the first few seconds before settling into warmth, the corner that always came untucked, the sound of rain against the roof and the distant tick of the clock on the windowsill. Then you wake and remember where you are. The ground doesn't creak, it crunches. Your blanket smells like a soup made from sweat, sage, and perseverance. The pillow is a shirt stuffed with socks. A cricket leaps across your chest like it owns the place. And still part of you is grateful you're alive. That's enough. The camp wakes slowly today. No one rushes, no urgent voices, just the quiet rhythm of motion, boots pulled on fires, lit harnesses checked. Margaret stands patiently. Horace yawns like an old lion. You rub a spot behind his ear and he doesn't flinch. Progress. The land ahead is soft again, rolling greenish, scattered with stones like forgotten punctuation. There are birds here. You hadn't noticed their absence until now. One swoops low and startles Biscuit, who barks once, then immediately pretends it didn't happen. You walk with less effort today, not because your body hurts less, but because it knows what to expect. Let's take a moment, gentle and earned, for a quiet truth. The human body adapts to nearly anything. The blisters become calluses. The aches become background music. The hunger dulls. The thirst teaches you discipline. You become not just a person walking, but someone who walks, and the mind follows. You learn to count shade patches, to measure distance in steps, not miles, to find comfort in repetition. Someone near the back begins whistling, a tune you almost recognize. You hum along anyway. The sound links the wagons like thread. People pick it up. A few make up words. None of them rhyme, but no one minds. Around midday, the trail forks again. The left path curves gently through low hills. The right one cuts through a rocky canyon, steep, short, and unforgiving. The guide doesn't hesitate. "Right," he says, saves a day. No one argues, not because they agree necessarily, but because everyone has learned decisions out here are never about what's best, only what's possible. The canyon is sharp, narrow. You scrape your knuckles more than once trying to push the wagon around tight corners. Margaret nearly loses her footing. Horace refuses to be hurried. A wagon behind you hits a rock. Loud snap. The axle's cracked. There's silence. Then a flurry of motion ropes, pulled supplies shifted, a repair team forms without instruction. You help where you can, holding the wheels steady as others hammer a splint into place. It takes 2 hours. When the wagon finally lurches forward again, the whole party cheers quietly but sincerely. You walk the next mile with your hand still on the wood just to make sure it doesn't fall apart again. At the far end of the canyon, the land opens. Not wide, not grand, just different. Softer colors, more shadow, a small creek trickling across the trail like a silver ribbon. You step into the water, not to drink, just to feel. Coolness seeps into your boots. Your toes sigh in relief. Someone nearby strips off their socks and just stands in it, arms out, eyes closed, like a tree soaking in light. You smile. You join them. That night camp is built under a bluff. The rocks overhead hold the day's heat, keeping the air warmer than usual. People sit close to the stone, letting it radiate into their backs. Someone makes tea, real tea, mint and something else. It tastes like home, even if it isn't yours. You lie on your side facing the fire. Biscuit sleeps with his paw twitching. Someone's whispering a story not to entertain, but to remember. You listen. It's about a woman who once walked the trail in silence, who carried a bundle across the plains. No one knew what was in it. When she died, someone opened it, found a book, a tiny clock, and a letter addressed to no one. The whisperer pauses. You don't ask what the letter said. Some things are better kept for dreams. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of the bluff behind you, the coolness of the creek in your bones, and the rhythm of the road still beating in your feet. You wake to music, not a fiddle, not a jaw harp, not even the off-key whistling of someone who thinks they know a tune. No, this is nature's kind wind moving through rock. It hums along the canyon walls, low and resonant like a cello beneath your dreams. You open your eyes and listen. It's not just sound, it's presence. A reminder that even when you sleep, the land keeps moving around you. The others are waking too slower today. You've all started to move like old paper, creased thin but capable of holding entire stories. Someone groans as they stretch. Someone else mutters something about beans again. You smile into your shirt collar and pretend you don't agree. Today's trail rises slowly, an incline you barely notice until your calves remind you they do. The wagons creak louder. Oxen dig in harder. Even the air feels heavier, like it's climbing too. The wind stays with you, stronger now, more playful. It snatches your hat once. You chase it. Biscuit joins in. You retrieve the hat. Biscuit wins the game. You find a feather in the dirt, long striped, slightly bent. You tuck it behind your ear like an accidental decoration. A boy walking behind you does the same. No one says a word. Let's pause here quietly for a truth you weren't taught in school. The Oregon Trail wasn't one trail. It was hundreds, woven and rewritten with every footstep, paths shifted with weather, with rumors, with the mistakes of those ahead. Some were well-trodden, others were guesses. The Oregon Trail was more concept than corridor. And now, you're part of it. Not following history, making it in your own dusty, limping way. Around midday, The incline steepens. Someone shouts steady, and suddenly everyone's pushing shoulders to wood boots, scraping dirt, sweat flying. The oxen strain. One wagon tips dangerously before correcting itself. You feel the weight of everything behind you. And then, just like that, you reach the top. No monument, no marker, just space. Open, bright, wide enough to make your chest hurt. You drop to your knees in dry grass and breathe like you've never had air before. Someone claps, someone else sobs. No one jokes this time. The view stretches for miles, ridges like teeth, a river winding below like a secret. Far to the west, a jagged line of blue mountains, the last ones. Someone says, "We're close." Someone else whispers, "We're not done." And both are right. Camp that night is high, windy. You tie everything down, blankets, pots, Margaret. Horace plants himself beside a rock and refuses to move. You're not surprised. Dinner is dry but warm. No one complains. Instead, you gather near a fire built low between stones. The guide tells a story not of the trail, but of what's after. Oregon, the valley, the rain, the soil so dark it turns your hands rich just touching it. You try to picture it. Fields, trees, a house built by your own sore fingers, a roof that doesn't leak, maybe even an oven, maybe even pie. And for the first time, you let yourself believe in after, not just next, not just survival, but arrival. Someone hands you a tin cup, inside tea and a single peppermint. You sip slowly. The mint bites bright and cold and sharp. It makes your eyes water. It makes you smile. You lie down close to the fire warmed by stone and story. Biscuit curls beside your hip, snoring like an old man. You drape a blanket over your legs and stare into the dark. No stars tonight, just wind and smoke and the slow pulse of firelight on sleeping faces. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a long time, you don't dream of walking, you dream of standing still, of belonging somewhere again, of home, not the one behind you, but the one ahead. This time, it does fall soft, steady on a roof that doesn't leak. In the dream you're inside, warm, dry, wrapped in something that smells faintly of lavender and bread. You wake to dust in your mouth and a goat chewing the hem of your blanket. It takes you a full 5 seconds to realize no one brought a goat. You sit up. The goat blinks at you unconcerned and ambles away toward a nearby wagon where a child shrieks, "She's back." Apparently, the goat belongs to them. Her name is Pickles. No one knows where she went for 2 days. No one asks. Some stories don't need explanations. You stand and stretch. The wind has died down, replaced by a low, warm calm. The kind of morning where the sun arrives slowly with polite footsteps and the air smells like something about to grow. Breakfast is sparse, dried fruit, a few crackers. Someone tries to rehydrate a biscuit and ends up with what looks like regret in a cup. But no one complains, because today you feel close. You can't say how. The landscape doesn't shout it. The trail hasn't changed dramatically, but something in your chest hums with quiet recognition. You've crossed something invisible, a threshold made of footsteps, and now it's just a matter of getting there. You walk with a new kind of tired, not heavy, but long, like your bones know they've carried you far. Your boots feel thinner than they used to. Your bag rattles less. You've left things behind on purpose or not. You've grown lighter and harder and maybe softer too. The road bends through low trees now. More shade, more birdsong, a flicker of color flowers blooming in the dust like rebellion. You pause to look at one. It's small, purple, completely unnecessary. And yet, it chose to bloom here. Let's pause gently for something beautiful and unscientific. Pioneer journals mention trail flowers often, not by name, not botanically, just sightings. Saw some bluebells today, a bloom beside the river, 3 red ones before the crossing. No drawings, no grand reflections, just brief, quiet awe. Like the land was reminding them, you're not the only thing trying to live here. You tuck a flower behind your ear, just for the hour, just to remember you can still choose beauty. By midday, the group slows. Someone up ahead has spotted tracks, wagon ruts, but deep fresh. People, close. Probably another train that left weeks before you. You all pick up the pace a little. The idea of others is suddenly thrilling. Validation that this is real, that you're not the last ones on this long, dry road. But you never quite catch them. The ruts veer off into the trees. Gone. That night, camp is lit by fireflies. You forgot about those. Tiny lights darting and glowing. Someone tries to catch one and ends up laughing too hard to keep their hand steady. A man offers a tin flute he's been carving for weeks. It only plays 3 notes, but he plays them proudly. They sound like a lullaby for stones. The guide says Oregon might be only a week away. You believe him, not because you have proof, but because your body wants to believe. You lie down that night on grass, not dirt, under trees, not open sky, with hope, not just habit. And for the first time since Missouri, you let yourself picture the end, a river, a valley, a place where your name means something again, a place where you stop arriving and finally, quietly, stay. You awaken to birdsong, not just one bird, but a choir trills chirps, warbles, layered in morning harmony like the forest itself is stretching and yawning beside you. You lie still for a moment, listening, not because you're too tired to move, but because the sound is kind. It's been a long time since the world greeted you gently. When you sit up, there's dew on the grass. Your blanket is damp, but you don't mind. The air smells like pine and sunlight. Biscuit is already up, chasing something invisible between tree trunks, tail a blur of optimism. You smile. You've walked so far from where you started, you realize the land has changed again. Trees are taller, the ground softer. The trail weaves instead of pounds. It's almost playful now, like a stream winding towards something better. Today feels close. You break camp with quiet joy. Your boots are still stiff, your back still sore, but the heaviness has shifted. It's no longer despair clinging to your shoulders. It's memory, earned and real and woven into your walk like thread. The morning miles pass quickly. You don't count them anymore. You measure by sound, by birds, by the color of moss on the rocks. Someone points out a rabbit. Another spots deer prints. The group is smaller now, tighter. Fewer wagons, fewer voices, but deeper friendships. A girl gives you a drawing done in charcoal smudged at the edges. It's a wagon under a star, a tree, a dog, and you. You ask, is that me? She says, it looks like you. That's enough. Let's rest here gently for a soft truth seldom spoken in textbooks. Many who survived the trail didn't remember every day, not because they weren't important, but because they blurred like wind across the plains. What remained were fragments, moments of connection, flashes of fear, one good laugh, one awful loss, one day of wildflowers. It's the texture that sticks, not the map. By midday, you reach a river, wide, cold, fast. You pause. It looks deep, dangerous. Someone says, "We could try to ford it." Someone else says, "We could try to wait." But the guide, calm as ever, says, "We build." And so you do. Logs dragged from the woods, ropes twisted from old tarps, a floating bridge more hope than architecture. You work with hands blistered into leather arms that tremble, shoulders that no longer argue. Together you move. The crossing takes hours. Wagons roll one by one, rocking like cradles on the water. Horace panics once. Margaret kicks the edge. Biscuits swims ahead like a hero and returns shivering but proud. When the last cart reaches shore, the cheer is so loud it startles birds into flight, and just like that, you are across. Camp that night is celebratory. Someone finds a tin of cinnamon and adds it to the beans. It's ridiculous. It's delicious. It's magic. You eat slowly, talk longer, tell stories that have nothing to do with walking. Someone sings, not loudly, just enough to stitch the moment into place. You lie down on moss under trees that feel like guardians and trace the shape of the future with your breath. You whisper to no one, "I think we're almost there." And the trees whisper back, not in words, but in the hush of their branches. "Yes, keep going." Today you smell smoke before you see it. Not thick, not threatening, just a trace wood smoke, soft on the wind, the kind that reminds you of stories and soup. You pause, nostrils flaring slightly, and tilt your head. It's not from your own camp, not from your own fire, which means someone else is close. You're not used to that anymore. The trail has been lonely for so long. Spaces between wagons, days between voices you don't already know. And now that smell, that proof of others, you walk faster. The land is changing again. More ferns now, greener things. The trees grow closer together, their shadows crossing the trail like kind hands. The ground is still firm, but the dust has settled. It smells like arrival. By mid-morning, you crest a low hill, and there below you, scattered among a cluster of trees and wagons, you see it. A settlement, not a city, not even a proper town, but people, tents, smoke rising in gentle spirals, the glint of tin pails, the sound of a hammer, rhythmic and purposeful. Someone behind you breathes. "Is that it?" Someone else whispers, "Almost." And you feel it not in your mind, but in your chest. Oregon is real, not an idea, not a rumor, a place, and you are near it. The group gathers at the edge of the ridge. No one rushes. You all just look, like staring into a mirror you didn't know you needed. Let's pause reverently for a reality that doesn't fit on postcards. Reaching the end didn't feel like winning. Many pioneers arrived half-starved, ill-grieving. They didn't throw their hats in the air. They collapsed, sat down in the dirt, and stared at the trees. Some wept. Some built shelters with shaking hands. Some simply slept for 3 days, because survival was not the prize. It was the price. You make your way down the hill slowly, your feet remembering how to be cautious. A man from the settlement meets you halfway. He waves. He's sunburned, smiling, missing a front tooth. "Where'd y'all come from?" he asks. You answer, "Independence, Missouri." He whistles. "You brought the whole country with you, didn't you?" Someone behind you laughs. And then more laughter. Soft at first, then louder. Not because it's funny, but because it's over. Almost over. The weight of it breaks loose from somewhere deep, and now it's laughter or nothing. You laugh until you cry. You cry until you laugh again. No one tells you to stop. That night, the settlement shares what they can. Bread, real bread, with crust that cracks and steam that rises. Someone pours something warm into your cup. It's bitter, but rich. There's salt in it. You could cry again just for the salt. You sit on a log beside the fire and realize your legs have stopped hurting. Not because they don't ache, but because they belong here now. They are no longer becoming. They simply are. Someone plays a fiddle, a good one. The notes fall like rain after drought. Two people dance, badly. The dog barks in rhythm. A child claps offbeat and doesn't care. You lean back and stare at the stars through the pine boughs. They look closer than usual, like they've been watching, like they waited for you. And as your eyes begin to close, you whisper the words you've been afraid to say. We made it. Even if you're not all the way there, even if the hard parts aren't all behind you, even if you still don't know what comes next, you made it to this fire, to this song, to this breath, and that tonight is enough. The morning after arrival feels strange, not because of where you are, but because of where you aren't. No dust in your teeth, no wagon creaking just behind your shoulder, no shouting about yokes or missing socks or who burned the beans again. The sounds here are slower, softer. A rooster somewhere, a pot being scrubbed, the distant clatter of someone splitting wood. You sit with a piece of real bread in your hand, staring at it like it's a message from the future. It has seeds in it. You don't remember the last time you tasted anything with seeds. You take a bite. It tastes like time, like something that waited to be ready. Around you, the camp bustles with an energy you don't quite recognize, not survival, not urgency, but beginning. People are already talking about lumber, about fences, about planting. Someone mentions a sawmill. Someone else gestures toward a thicket and says, "I think I'll build there." Everyone is exhausted, but the weariness carries a different weight now. You've moved from endurance into intention, and it's almost uncomfortable. Let's pause gently for a truth not often told. Many pioneers didn't know what to do when they arrived. They were experts in motion, in getting through one more day, but arrival required a shift they weren't prepared for. Resting felt guilty. Stillness felt empty. Joy was confusing. You feel that now sitting with bread in your lap and nothing you have to do. So, you find something to do anyway. You help dig a trench, just a small one near a future foundation. The soil here is dark, moist, rich. It crumbles easily in your hands. Someone laughs as they hit a root. Someone else finds a beetle and names it after their uncle. By midday, your arms ache, but it's the good kind, the honest kind. Not the trail's grind, but the body remembering how to build. A boy nearby plays with a hoop and stick. A girl draws in the dirt with her finger. You sit and watch them for a while, quietly stunned by the simplicity of it all. And then you see it. A tree just past the edge of camp, small, crooked, but filled with fruit, real fruit, not wild berries, apples. The others gather quickly, not to strip it bare, but to marvel, to honor. Someone climbs, someone else spreads a blanket below. The first apple passed down is handed like treasure, like ceremony. You take a bite, sweet, crisp, alive. It floods your mouth with memory of trees you forgot, of picnics long gone, of markets and baskets and sticky fingers. You chew slowly, reverently, and when you're done, you save the core, not to discard, but to plant, because now you think in roots. Later, someone starts a fire not for warmth, but for cooking. A stew made from a mix of trail rations and new herbs foraged nearby. It smells like transition, like two worlds shaking hands. You eat it with both hands wrapped around the bowl. Across from you, the woman who lost her husband 3 weeks back smiles for the first time. Just a little, just enough. The man with the fiddle plays again, this time a slower tune. People don't dance, they listen. Biscuit curls up by your foot, snoring softly, his fur finally clean. When you lie down that night, it's not on dirt, it's not a bed yet, but it's a raised pallet, covered with pine boughs, a blanket folded twice. Your head finds the edge of something soft, and you think, not I'm still on the trail. But the trail is now part of me. You close your eyes, not to escape, but to rest. And your final thought before sleep is simple, small, true. Tomorrow we build. You wake before the sun, not because of cold or noise or someone shouting about missing oxen. You wake because your body's ready, your eyes open, and your first breath feels different. It feels rooted. You sit up on your pine bough pallet and stretch your arms overhead. They ache, but not with the kind of ache that whispers survival. This one hums with usefulness. You earned it yesterday with a shovel and a hammer handle. Outside, the sky is still navy blue, stars fading slowly as the earth exhales. You step out quietly, no boots, just bare feet on damp soil. It's cool, and you feel every twig, every smooth patch of dirt. The ground here feels alive in a way the trail never did. A few others are up too. The blacksmith's son is tending coals. The woman who sews is brushing out her hair in long, patient strokes. Biscuits, already awake, sitting like a small, scruffy statue, nose twitching at the morning. You walk a little past camp, not far, just to a ridge with a view. And there it is, Oregon, not the fantasy, not the promise printed in handbills, but the real thing. Rolling hills, dark forests, streaks of river light, mist curling like smoke from a giant's mouth. Land that waited. You stand there for a long time. Eventually, you return and eat breakfast without thinking about rations. There's bread again, eggs somehow. You don't ask questions. Someone has chickens now. Someone else has a cow. You marvel at the idea that someone still believed enough to bring a cow all the way here. The work starts early. Today, you're helping raise a frame for a house not yours, not yet, but someone else's. And somehow, that feels better. There's a rhythm to it. Lift hammer, hold brace. People shout, not in anger, but in timing. Boards creak, nails bite, muscles burn. You laugh when someone drops a beam and it lands in the mud with a splat. No one curses. You just try again. Let's pause here quietly for something simple but profound. Most settlers didn't build alone. Neighbors helped neighbors. Walls went up as a group. Roofs were shared labor. The line between mine and ours blurred, not out of kindness necessarily, but out of need. You feel that now, that blur, that we. By midday, the walls are standing. You all step back and cheer, not wildly just satisfied. The woman it belongs to cries a little. She says, "Thank you 4 times. You say any time because you mean it. In the afternoon, a boy catches a fish, a real one, big, silver, flapping like disbelief. He runs through camp, holding it up like a trophy, grinning so wide his cheeks practically squeak. Everyone cheers. Even Margaret, chewing stoically near the wagons, lifts her head as if to say, "Finally!" The fish is shared at dinner, flaked into stew. It tastes like reward, like everything you've earned but never expected. That night, someone begins carving a signpost. They write Oregon in blocky letters. Below that, the names of each wagon family. Below that, a space left blank, waiting for more. You trace your finger over the letters, not for pride, but because it's the first time your name has felt planted. Later, as the fire dies down, someone asks, "Do you miss the trail?" The group is quiet for a moment. You say, "I miss the stars." Someone else says, "I don't miss the beans." Everyone laughs. Then someone says, "I miss who I was out there." And no one laughs at that. You lie down later than usual. The moon is brighter now, the trees less imposing. You curl beneath your blanket and listen not for danger, but for tomorrow. And you think you came here looking for land, but maybe without meaning to. You found home. Rain comes softly like it doesn't want to be a bother. It begins in the middle of the night, a whisper on canvas, a hush in the trees. No thunder, no wind, just a gentle soaking presence. When you wake, it's still falling, steady, persistent, calm. You lie under your blanket for a while listening. You don't dread it like you used to. On the trail, rain meant soaked boots, heavy wheels, cold bones, and worry. Here, it means the soil is drinking. When you step outside, your feet sink slightly into the mud. There's mist over the ridge and water beading on every leaf. The whole world smells like green. You take it slow that morning. So does everyone else. No rush now, nothing chasing you. The chores wait, but they don't growl. Someone is patching a roof. Someone else is covering firewood with old canvas. You help where you can, tying knots, moving buckets. You've learned which ones hold water and which ones leak from the bottom. Later, you walk to the stream. It's fuller now, moving fast. You watch it swirl around rocks, carrying leaves and fragments of bark downstream. You crouch, touch the water, cold but kind. You splash your face, feel the sting, and let it remind you you're still here. Let's pause a moment with quiet wonder for something ordinary. Rain didn't stop life. It began it. Settlers wanted rain, prayed for it, danced for it. Too much, and it could ruin a crop. Too little and nothing grew, but the right kind. The slow kind. It was a blessing spoken in droplets instead of words. You sit by the stream for a long while watching. Later, back at camp, someone builds a small covered lean-to, just wood and branches and a bit of hide. It doesn't look like much, but the inside stays dry. A few kids play there, sharing a book with pages so soft and thumbed through, it's more fabric than paper. They call it their library. You offer them a bit of charcoal, and they draw all over the inside walls, animals, wagons, stick figures with wild hair. One of them draws you. You ask if it's flattering. They say, kind of. You accept that. Lunch is simple. Bread, boiled roots, a jar of pickled something that smells like it could raise the dead. You eat it anyway. In the afternoon, you help mend a wagon wheel. Not because you're leaving, no one is, but because it feels good to fix something. The wheel turns, the wood groans, the iron band slips into place. You wipe your hands and feel proud, not tired. That evening, the rain slows, the clouds break open just enough to show the first star, then another. Someone lights a lantern, another lights a second, just to match. The glow is soft, golden, and just before dinner, someone makes an announcement, a wedding, tomorrow. Two of the younger settlers, quiet, awkward, steady, have asked if the group would witness their vows. They don't have rings, don't need them, just words and a tree and dry ground if the weather permits. Everyone cheers. It's the first true celebration you've heard since leaving Missouri. That night, a hush settles over the camp, a happy kind, anticipatory. You lie down beneath a thick blanket and feel the earth still damp beneath you, but not cold, just real. Biscuit curls into your side. His fur smells like wet grass. His paws twitch in his sleep. You whisper to him, "We made it, didn't we?" He doesn't answer, but the steady rise and fall of his breath tells you everything. The morning of the wedding arrives bright and damp. Rain has rinsed the world clean. The leaves gleam. The grass stands taller. The mud has begun to crust at the edges, and the air smells like everything is just barely dry enough to carry joy. You rise earlier than usual, not because you're needed, but because you want to be useful. There's excitement moving through the camp like birdsong. People are bustling, brushing coats, smoothing skirts, shaking dust from collars that haven't mattered for weeks. You wash your face in the stream. Let the cold bite your skin and wake you gently. It's the kind of morning where everything feels possible, where the past doesn't weigh as heavy, and the trail behind you is just that, behind you. The wedding takes place beneath the largest tree in camp. Someone tied a ribbon around the trunk. Another added a few wildflowers. A log serves as a bench. Blankets form rows. The guests bring little a carved spoon, a sprig of mint, a tiny painted rock. The couple stands quietly, arms barely touching. They don't say much. Their eyes do most of the talking. The guide, somehow chosen to officiate, clears his throat. He's not a preacher, he reminds everyone. Just a man with boots and a voice. No one objects. He says a few words about the trail, about survival, about choosing each other when everything is hard and ugly and uncertain. You feel that in your chest. They say I do like a whisper, like a promise, meant only for each other's ears. Everyone claps, not wildly, just warmly, honestly. And then someone starts playing music. A fiddle again, joined by a wooden flute someone carved weeks ago. The notes are simple, repeating, but they move. People dance, not like a ballroom, not with grace, but with feet that remember freedom, with laughter that rises from places long quiet. One man trips. A child spins until she falls over. Biscuit chases shadows and gets underfoot. You dance too, with no rhythm, with no shame. just motion and breath and the soft ground beneath you. Let's pause here for something the history books rarely admit. There was love on the trail, not always romance, but love. In the way people shared water, held hands during storms, sat silently beside someone whose grief had no words. Love wasn't a reward, it was a tool, a kind of map, and now you see it everywhere. After the dancing comes food, not much, but enough. A stew made from everyone's leftovers, a sweet cake someone miraculously produced, tiny glasses of something sharp that burns your throat and makes your ears warm. You eat, you toast, you sit on a stump and let it all soak in. Later, the newlyweds disappear quietly. No big farewell, just two people walking hand in hand toward their half-built cabin. Someone ties a ribbon to their door. Someone else leaves bread wrapped in cloth. You stay by the fire long after the crowd thins. The music slows, the night cools. Someone sits beside you, doesn't speak, just passes you a tin cup. You sip. It's warm. You don't ask what it is. The stars are clear again, high and clean, and not as far away as they once felt. You lie down with your blanket pulled to your chin, and tonight, more than ever, you feel still, anchored. The trail no longer lives in your legs. It lives in your stories now, in the way your hands move, in the way your breath settles, in the way you now believe truly that not all good things lie ahead. Some of them are already here. You wake to laughter, real deep belly laughter, the kind that tumbles over itself uncontained and echoing through the trees. For a moment, you're confused. Then you smile because it's morning and someone's laughing. You step outside and it's already warmer than usual. The sun is just high enough to slant golden across the clearing. Biscuit is rolling in something he probably shouldn't be rolling in, and a group of children are chasing a chicken that, to be fair, started it. The camp feels light. You'd forgotten this was possible, waking into a day with nothing to flee from. After a slow breakfast bread with a smear of something berry adjacent, possibly jam, possibly mashed optimism, you help the blacksmith's son haul wood. He talks the whole time about frogs mostly, and doesn't seem to notice that your arms are stronger now, that you don't stumble, that you lift like someone who's carried too much and learned how to let things go. At midday, a stranger arrives. He comes on foot, hat in hand, clothes worn but intact. He carries no weapon, just a pack, and something that might once have been a violin case. He introduces himself as Levi, says he came from the south, says he's heard about the settlement. His voice is steady, his smile cautious. No one distrusts him, but no one trusts him either. Not yet. You understand. The trail has made everyone careful in ways they didn't choose. Still, someone offers him water, another a seat. And then, because this is how community works, he's handed a hoe and asked if he knows how to dig. He does. You work alongside him in the afternoon, breaking up a new patch of ground. The soil here is almost too rich, dark, and soft, a kind of generosity you're still not used to. Levi hums while he works. Just a few bars, low, unintrusive. You recognize the tune, though. A lullaby. You don't know from where. You don't know why it catches in your chest. Let's pause gently for a footnote. The textbooks always skip. Newcomers were both hope and hazard. They brought news, ideas, seeds, illness, skill, stories. Sometimes they stayed. Sometimes they stole. Sometimes they changed everything. Communities had to learn fast how to welcome without opening the door too wide. You decide to walk the ridge after work, not for any reason, just to breathe, to remember the view, the same one that nearly made you cry the day you arrived. It's changed, or maybe you have. Either way, it feels closer now, less like a dream, more like a backyard. Someone joins you, the widow with the quiet laugh. She doesn't say much, just walks beside you, hands clasped behind her back. She hums, too, something different, something wordless and strong. You don't need to speak. That's the thing about arriving. You stop needing to prove that you belong. Back in camp, Levi unpacks the case. It's a fiddle, scuffed, missing a string. He tunes it carefully, plays something old, something southern, something sad and sweet and not entirely sure what it wants to be. The music weaves through the evening like thread through cloth. People settle in. One by one, faces tilt toward the stars. You lie back on a blanket. Biscuit is at your feet again, twitching in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of chickens or freedom or both. Your legs are sore. Your arms are dirty. Your belly is full, and your heart, quietly, steadily, holds more than it used to. More memory, more meaning, more room. You close your eyes not to escape, but to rest where you are. You are not running anymore. You are not reaching. You are here. This morning begins with the sound of a saw. Back and forth, steady, rhythmic, familiar now. It used to be jarring proof that someone had started work before you'd finished dreaming. But now it's comforting, a sign of life continuing, of purpose humming just beneath the morning mist. You stretch beneath your blanket and smile. Your hands are rough, your knees creak. Your back complains a little when you sit up, but none of that matters because your body works, it moves, it helps. You've learned to live in it again. Outside the camp is a choreography of motion. Someone is sawing planks. Someone else is stitching a tarp. A boy is practicing with a slingshot, missing everything, but still proud. The widow, Eliza, you finally learned her name, is painting something on a wagon side. It's a sunrise. In bold, curling strokes, you offer to help, but she waves you off. Only room for one sunrise today, she says with a wink. So you haul water instead. The stream is running stronger now, fat from days of steady rain. It sings around your ankles as you step in to fill buckets. You linger just a moment too long. It's cold, but real. It reminds you that your senses are still yours, that the world still meets you where you are. On the way back, you pass Levi, teaching the children a dance. It involves clapping and stomping and spinning in ways that defy all logic and most grace. It ends in laughter every time. You stay to watch for a bit, then get pulled in by a small hand and affirm you're next. You dance badly, no one cares. Later, the guide approaches you. He's holding a map, not of the trail, but of the valley. Ink lines rough measurements, patches of drawn trees. He's marking plots, outlining spaces. He asks, "Have you thought about where you'd want to settle?" The question catches you off guard. For so long you didn't think about after. You thought about survival, not home. You ask for a little time. He nods. Walk the ridges. Listen to the soil. It'll tell you. Let's pause here for something quiet and true. Land ownership on the frontier was often more idea than reality. Yes, there were claims, but lines shifted. Deeds were guesses. Neighbors negotiated with axes and fences and patience. Sometimes what you owned was just what you loved enough to care for. So you walk. You take a trail past the ridge where the trees thin and the air carries a different note, almost citrus, almost wind, almost invitation. You find a rise, not too steep, not too exposed, with just enough space for a small home, a garden, maybe a pen for animals you don't own yet. You sit there for a while. The grass is long, the earth is soft, a hawk circles far above, and, not in the way that shakes your bones, but in the way that settles them. This is the place. Back at camp, you mark your name beside the plot, just ink on paper, but it feels like carving in stone. That night, the fiddle comes out again. The air is warm. The food is simple roasted root vegetables, and something that might have once been jerky, now softened into something edible with enough boiling. Someone tells a story about a thunderstorm on the trail. Another tells one about accidentally eating candle wax. Twice. You laugh until your cheeks hurt. Before bed, you sit by the fire with Eliza. She doesn't say much, just this: we're not settlers anymore. You look at her. She continues: we're settled. You lie down under the stars, your name on a map, your place in a valley, your story no longer just about movement, but about meaning. And you whisper to yourself just once: I think I can stay. It begins with thunder, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that splits the sky in anger. Just a slow rolling murmur, like someone clearing their throat far away. You wake to it, blinking at a sky still gray with early morning. You listen, no rain yet, just the promise of it. You pull on your coat, the one you almost threw out 3 times on the trail, and step outside. The valley is still, not sleepy, but waiting. Chickens huddle beneath their shelter. Tools lean against wagons. Even Biscuit seems unusually cautious, sniffing the air with a furrowed brow. Today's not a working day. It's a watching day. You sit on your log and sip something hot from a dented tin mug. You're not sure what's in it, but it's warm and slightly bitter and exactly what your hands needed. From where you sit, you can see the cabin frames yours included rising like ribs from the earth. Skeletons of futures not yet lived in, but already claimed. You feel proud, not in the loud chest-beating way, but the quiet cup your hands around it way. The kind that glows rather than burns. The clouds gather. By mid-morning, the sky darkens, and when the first drops fall, they fall all at once, not gently, not politely, just there as if the clouds had been holding their breath for days and finally let it out in a sigh of silver. People scatter. Tarps are pulled. Children squeal and run for cover. Someone slips in the mud and laughs about it. No one is angry. It's just water, and you're not on the trail anymore. You help Eliza secure the wagon covers. She works fast, her hair plastered to her forehead, her coat soaked through. You both laugh when a gust of wind nearly takes the tarp and her with it. By afternoon, the camp becomes quiet again, not from fear, but from surrender. There's nothing to do but wait. So you sit in the shelter someone built last week. There are others there too. shoulders damp eyes, soft voices low. You pass a chunk of bread between you. Someone hums. Levi is carving again. This time, a small figure, a person holding a lantern. He says it's for the path that runs between the cabins. So we always remember where we've come from. He says, not looking up. Let's pause here for one more overlooked truth. Storms didn't stop the pioneers. They slowed them. And in the slowing, they saw each other. Long days of endless travel left little space for connection. But a storm. A storm was permission to pause, to breathe, to be human together. And you feel that now. This strange stillness, this rare and sacred quiet. By nightfall, the rain is steady, but softer. You sit in your half-built cabin beneath the eaves wrapped in a blanket that still smells like wood smoke and old canvas. You think about the trail not in regret, but in recognition. Every blister, every broken axle, every too thin meal and too long silence. It brought you here, not to this cabin, not even to this valley, but to this version of yourself, the one who builds, the one who listens, the one who knows that sometimes waiting out the storm is the work. You close your eyes to the sound of rain drumming steadily on the roof beams. You do not flinch. You do not fear. You just let it fall and whisper, let it come. The rain ends in the night. You wake to quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but the hush of a world that's listening. The air smells clean. The earth sighs beneath you, damp but content. You step outside, barefoot toes pressing into mud cooled by moonlight. Mist drifts low across the clearing. Every leaf holds a drop. Every branch glistens. It feels like the world has been washed. You move slowly through camp, not to work, not to check on anything, just to be. A lantern still burns faintly outside Eliza's wagon. Levi's fiddle case rests beside the cook fire. A pair of boots sits neatly near someone's door. You belong here. It's not a feeling that arrives with fireworks. It arrives quietly, like breath, like sleep, like sunrise. Later, you gather with the others near the ridge. A new wagon has arrived, not a full party, just 3 people. Tired, mud-streaked, eyes wary, but they're welcomed without question. One of them cries when handed a slice of warm bread, just a single tear, but you see it. You've been it. By midday, the sun is strong again. Work resumes, but differently, not frantically, not desperately, just as it should. A child helps haul nails. Someone repairs a garden fence. Eliza hums while hanging linens to dry. You spend the afternoon laying the floor of your cabin, each plank fitted snugly, each nail driven with purpose. The walls are still bare, the roof still a promise, but when you stand in the doorway, you don't see emptiness. You see beginning. Let's pause one final time for a truth easy to miss. The end of the trail wasn't an ending. It was a shift. From surviving to sustaining. From fleeing to planting. From always moving to finally becoming. The Oregon Trail didn't end in a destination. It ended in a decision to stay. And you have stayed. That night, the camp gathers not for a wedding, not for a birth, not for any reason, but this because it's time. Time to light the lanterns. Time to share the bread. Time to sing not the sad songs of the trail, but the ones that grow from new soil. Songs made of wind and work and welcome. You sit beside Biscuit, now older and grayer, but just as loyal. He leans into you warm and heavy. The stars return, and someone calls out names, not a roll call, but a remembrance. The ones who didn't make it, the ones who left early, the ones who arrived late, and you bow your head for each, not in sorrow, in honor. And finally, as the fire burns low, someone says, "Tomorrow we raise your roof." You smile, not because you need shelter, but because you now have something to shelter. You sleep that night with the quiet certainty that you have arrived, not just in Oregon, not just at journey's end, but in a version of yourself you never could have imagined at the start. You no longer chase peace, you carry it. And more than that, you grew from it. You learned to wait through storms, to listen without needing answers, to hold quiet things gently. You learned how strength isn't loud and peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives like this, in the soft breath of a dog asleep at your feet, in the creak of wood shaped by your hands, in the firelight warming faces that used to be strangers. Tonight, nothing is chasing you, not hunger, not fear, not the ghost of the life you thought you had to live. Tonight, you rest not because you're worn out. You rest because you are whole. So close your eyes, friend. Let the soft crackle of the fire be your lullaby. Let the rhythm of rain remembered soothe you deeper. Let the weight of blankets remind you of arms that once held and will hold again. There will be more days ahead, more roofs to raise, more trails to mark, more songs to hum beneath clean skies. But not now. Now there is only this stillness, warmth, breath. Even the oldest tales have something new to say if we listen gently. May this moment of quiet carry you through the night like a soft breeze through open windows. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.
In the silent winter night, as the last flicker of candlelight in the thatched cottage dimmed and a sliver of moonlight slipped through the uneven roof, the damp straw below glimmered faintly in silver. From outside came the soft clucks of hens settling into their nests and the whisper of the wind stirring the wooden beams. Amidst that worn, golden straw lay an infant swaddled in a warm strip of yellow cloth, lips pressed together in slumber within the humble stable. Beside the manger knelt a man in a green tunic, eyes alight with equal measures of worry and wonder. Two women knelt nearby, their forms shadowed against the darkness, one clutching a white hen to her chest, the other pressing her hand gently to her pregnant belly. Above them, a circular carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood crowned the rafters, lending an almost sacred hush to the moment. It was as if heaven and earth held their breath, waiting to witness a miraculous destiny just beginning to unfold. Chapter 1. A Dawn in the Straw-Filled Stable. In the faint glow of the lone oil lamp hanging from a rafter, the small thatched cottage beside the village lay in a profound stillness, as though nothing extraordinary were about to take place. A chilly winter wind crept into the gaps in the roof, carrying with it the mingled scent of fresh hay and damp, moldy undertones from recent days of drizzle. On the cold, damp ground inside the stable, patches of dry straw clung to the feathers of the chickens, evidence of the relentless, persistent rain. Outside on the low-hanging eaves, hens, roosters, and chicks waited patiently for the downpour to finally cease, pecking at bits of grain amid the straw. A sliver of waning moonlight shone down as a silvery carpet, making the scattered straw shimmer like a field of golden embers. Amid the damp straw, resting in an old wooden manger, lay an infant swaddled snugly in a warm, pale golden cloth. Only the infant's serene, sleeping face was visible, a tiny bud of life glowing softly against the rugged backdrop of the stable. From outside came the distant echo of roosters crowing and the soft rustle of straw shifting as the chickens scratched about. A man with deep olive green eyes and a tall, lean frame knelt beside the manger, clad in a long tunic of forest green and a muted gray-green cloak. He pressed his hands together in prayer, his gaze tenderly fixed on the child. Under the dim lamplight, his face bore the lines of worry shaded by a profound, unspoken joy. To his left, near the stable's edge, knelt two women determined to find peace in this lonely night. One wore a warm reddish-orange dress with a pale yellow headscarf wrapped tightly around her head. Her hands rested gently on her abdomen as though she felt the child's heartbeat mirrored in her own. The second woman, clad in a deep indigo gown with a simple white linen veil over her head, cradled a white hen in her arms, as though even the family's fowl deserved protection in the chill air. Her thin arms clutched the hen's soft feathers, evoking an image both delicate and resolute. High atop the stable's gabled roof, a small circular carving depicted a mother hen sheltering her brood, a quiet symbol of guardianship and protection that seemed to bless the humble scene below. Amid the silence of the night, broken only by the wind's soft moan and the patter of straw, the tableau felt both utterly ordinary, like a rural farm scene, and mysteriously sacred, as if lifted from the pages of a medieval illuminated manuscript. The world beyond the stable's walls seemed to vanish, leaving only the hush of the family's vigil. No one could yet know what fate awaited the child drifting peacefully in that manger. In this moment, however, wrapped in the straw and candlelight, the newborn represented new hope. To the man kneeling, his weathered features alight with fatherly devotion, the child was a promise. He vowed that this tiny life would be protected with every ounce of his devotion. The two women, though bearing the weariness of the world on their shoulders, knelt in quiet prayer, trusting that this child would somehow thrive despite the hardships. Chapter 2. The Journey Home. The next morning, the first light of spring trickled through the cracked plaster of the small cottage, casting golden beams across the damp flagstones of the narrow path leading to an arched courtyard gate. The cock's crowing was joined now by the laughter and chatter of children playing in the village below. Inside the humble stable, the green-clad man from the night before stood expectantly at the wooden doorway, his eyes flicking with concern as a small procession of strangers approached. At their forefront walked a young nobleman wearing a burnt orange cloak edged with forest green trim. Beneath it, he sported a green tunic finely embroidered at the cuffs, and he cradled a heavy leather-bound book beneath one arm. Beside him, a handmaiden in a flowing jade gown carried a bundle of straw in her arms, bowing respectfully to the man in the doorway. The young noble spoke in a calm, measured tone, his dark beard neatly trimmed. "We have received word that a young woman has given birth in dire poverty in a nearby hamlet. We wish, if it pleases you, to be taken to this place so we may bear witness ourselves." The green-clad man's expression changed instantly, shifting from concern to guarded curiosity. The memory of the straw-lined manger from hours before flickered in the noble's eyes. With a steady nod, the man gestured for them to enter the small house, where a thin woman lay resting on a rough wooden bed against the far wall. Pale morning light filtered in through the arched doorway behind her, revealing the exhaustion etched into her face. She stirred as the noble and his entourage stepped in. It was the mother of the newborn from the stable. Through a croak in her throat, she addressed the noble as he approached. "My lord, if you have come for that child." "I hardly know how to explain. I gave birth in this straw-filled stable alone. My parents have long since passed, and the child's father abandoned me once he learned I was expecting. I have managed alone, without a coin to my name, just as you see." The green-clad man moved to her side, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My lord," he implored the noble, "pray do not dismiss us entirely. We are but poor folk who have endured hardship and illness. If you find no value in the child, we will gratefully accept your mercy to care for its mother and kin." The young noble gave a half-smile, placing a hand on the mother's quilt. Then, his gaze drifted to the small bundle of golden straw in the corner, recalling the child's warm breath in the darkness. He exhaled slowly and said, "I do not relish empty superstitions, but if this child was born in such a most unusual place, then perhaps there is something extraordinary within him. We will take him to the northern keep. There the wise and learned may confirm whether he bears any divine mark. Until then, attend to his mother and him, and keep them safe." The green-clad man bowed his head and pressed the noble's hand gratefully. "We thank your grace. If the child bears no gift, show us mercy. If so, we trust in your compassion." With that, the noble turned to his handmaiden. "You two go ahead and guide them. I will follow close behind. Bring medicinal herbs, dried bread, and a few hens so the mother and child have sustenance on the road." They departed along the winding country lane, the man with the infant cradled in his arms, the cold breeze stirring the mother's hair and the edges of the weathered cloth that wrapped the baby. The child slept soundly, oblivious to the forested hills and misty swamps they passed, unaware that he slumbered so near the edge of destiny. Before the noble could leave the small dwelling, the green-clad man knelt once more at the threshold of the stable and bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Grace. May heaven bear witness to our gratitude." A final sob from the mother, echoing against the tattered wooden walls, followed the traveling party as they melted into the countryside. Chapter 3: Discovery at the Mistbound Keep. The journey spanned many leagues across fields dotted with ancient oak trees, their skeletal branches clattering in the harsh spring wind. Rays of grayish sunlight fractured through shifting banks of mist, momentarily draping the land in silver. Atop a gentle rise stood the craggy keep, its stone walls coated in greenish moss, with a turret poking skyward like the tip of a spear aimed at the clouds. Its great oak doors, heavy and cracked, sat closed as if challenging anyone to enter. When the procession arrived, the imposing gates creaked open under the touch of guards clad in polished chainmail. Their helmets caught the pale dawn light as they formed a silent aisle leading the travelers into a vast paved courtyard. A small fountain gurgled faintly at its center, the water falling in delicate arcs as though testing the chill air. Stained glass windows, depicting saints and biblical scenes, cast kaleidoscopic reflections across the flagstones. Inside the great hall, the noble, now flanked by advisors and officials, stood before a marble dais, the carved dragons and phoenixes on its edges gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. Portraits on the walls recounted epic voyages and holy miracles. One image unmistakably showed a child laid in a manger scene, mirroring the very scene that brought them here. The noble spoke with steely composure. "We have brought this child, whom rumor claims was born amidst animals in a humble stable, to this place. Let learned men and women examine him. Should he possess any divine mark, make it known. If not, we shall return him to his mother, and end this matter." An elder statesman presided from a seat of honor. His gray hair framed a face carved by years of governance and prayer. "Very well," he replied in a gravelly voice. "Summon our wisest physicians, astrologers, and spiritual guides." In bygone ages, texts spoke of children born under a waning moon in such humble settings as forebears of great change. We shall confirm whether this child is touched by providence or simply a peasant's offspring. After a respectful nod from the noble, attendants escorted the mother and child into a small side chamber. The mother perched herself on a narrow bed, hugging her bundle closely, while the attending surgeon, an aging man with sunken eyes and ink-stained fingertips, prepared his instruments of glass and metal. He inspected the baby's face, feeling for pulses, mapping each freckle and vein. "Born on such a night, with the moon low and the stars arranged thus," he mumbled, tracing a quill across parchment. "The child carries the sign of the celestial radiance. Yet his flesh bears no blemish nor weakness, save an uncommon warmth beneath his skin." The mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Surely you do not subscribe to mere superstition." "He is my son, and I will protect him." The physician, eyes glinting in intrigue, waved his hand. "I rely not on superstition but on prognosis and study. Yet this child's reaction to my salves is unexpected." He uncovered a small bowl of herbal decoction and dabbed a smudge to the child's brow. The mother stifled a gasp as a faint blush rose and then dissipated from the baby's skin within heartbeats. "Remarkable," he said softly. "His resistance is beyond mortal. He may live through the harshest winter. Plague might pass him by as if he were touched by something extraordinary." Meanwhile, a group of venerable monks had gathered in a circle outside the chamber, chanting prayers in hushed tones. Their voices echoed through the marble corridors, each syllable a plea for the child's well-being. The fragrance of incense swirled in the air as they burned frankincense, and the smoke wreathed around the pillars, imparting a sense of solemnity as though heaven were itself leaning in to listen. Chapter 4: Sacred Care and Divine Imagery. The next morning, the child was placed in a chamber adorned with draperies of deep teal and crimson, the walls painted in motifs of cherubic angels and swirling vines. A soft rug of scarlet lay underfoot, offering warmth against the stone. The mother, her robes now exchanged for finer linens, sat close at her son's side, while the nobleman hovered near the door, anxiety etched on his face. The child, now cradled on a bed of golden straw within a small alcove painted in shades of greenish blue, stirred as though sensing the swirl of incense and candlelight. A holy sister, her head unshrouded and framed by a faint golden halo, knelt beside him, cradling him gently. Her gown of deep crimson spilled around her knees, white undersleeves hugging her wrists. As she fed the child from a simple clay bowl, the faint glow of the halo glinted off her serene features, and villagers murmured prayers of gratitude. Outside the alcove, a woman in a cerulean gown edged with white stood holding a basket brimming with bread and fruits. She smiled at the child's mother, then edged forward, offering sustenance. Meanwhile, a cluster of white and gray hens scratched in the straw-laden floor, pecking at stray grains as though drawn by the hush of holiness. Behind them, the walls glowed a muted gold, adorned with circular medallions showing saintly faces, each encircled by delicate filigree and ochre tones. Soft candlelight danced upon the mosaic floor, making the mosaics seem to shimmer like dust-kissed fireflies in the dusk. Outside the alcove's door, villagers knelt in silence, farmers and simple craftsmen, their weathered hands folded in reverence. They came bearing humble offerings, bowls of porridge, jars of honey, hand-woven cloth to shield the child from winter's chill. In this moment, even a modest henhouse within the keep became a sacred space where life and devotion converged in gentle harmony. Chapter 5. Teaching and a Brewing Crisis. Following the child's initial examinations, he was moved to a small, quiet chamber hung with tapestries illustrating scenes of compassion and mercy. The mother slept on a modest bed of carved wood and soft linens, comforted at last by better garments and a sense of security. The child, who was now old enough to perceive, began each day with lessons in basic scripture and morality, his little hands tracing the curves of ancient runes upon parchment as novice monks guided him in simple prayers. Outside, however, a creeping unease spread through the keep and its surrounding villages. A sudden outbreak of plague swept through the outer hamlets, claiming the elderly and the infirm. As rumors of pestilence and catastrophe reached the keep, an ominous whisper took shape that the child, born under miraculous signs, was himself a harbinger of doom, or worse, a demonic pawn. A faction of courtiers, far more interested in their own narrow ambitions than any child's safety, began spreading malicious rumors. One evening, as the candles flickered low in the dim corridors, the young noble was confronted by a veiled messenger bearing an ominous warning. If that child lives, your influence wanes, your grace. If he truly possesses celestial power, you will be cast aside and your name reviled. The noble's jaw clenched in frustration. He retorted, voice quivering with resolve. I do not wish to harm a child, but if I must protect him at all costs, I will. Such slander has no basis. Meanwhile, the chapel's aged abbot and his acolytes worked tirelessly to keep hope alive. Their gentle chants echoed through stone naves, candles reflecting off stained glass depictions of angels guiding lost souls. The abbot implored the noble. We must guard the boy. These slanders spring from fear and ignorance. Let me lead a procession of prayer and light to shield them. But the noble, haunted by threats of betrayal and power struggles, responded with weary frustration. Every day brings new peril. If I do nothing, conspiracies grow bolder. Save the boy first, then quell the treachery. Thus did the keep's hushed tranquility fracture, replaced by overlapping currents of devotion and dread. Chapter 6. A Night of Desperate Struggle. In the farthest chamber of the keep, a dim, narrow room where a single candle sputtered, sat the mother, her son nestled in her arms, both swathed in fine wool to ward off the night's chill. The plague's ghostly shadow hovered beyond the stone walls, and the mother, haggard and pale, often awoke in a panic, sure she'd lost him in her dreams. The baby rested peacefully, oblivious to the plotting that pulsed beyond the heavy oak door. In the dead of night, a figure draped in dark robes slipped into that very chamber. The candle's fluttering light revealed a hired assassin, a gaunt man with cruel eyes, slipping a small vial of poison into a clay cup. The mother stirred, sensing an intruder. Her heart hammered as she realized the man intended to harm her child. In one swift motion, she lunged from the bed, grabbing his arm. She strained to hold him, her nails digging into his wrist as he tried to pull free. A whisper of steel sliced through the darkness. Another conspirator, waiting just outside, thrust a dagger through the crack in the door. The assassin let out a strangled cry as the blade found its mark. Blood spurted into the candlelight, staining the wooden floor. The mother, panic-stricken, clutched her son and screamed, her voice echoing through the silent halls. Outside, the alarm bells clanged with urgent clangs. Guards in chainmail, swords drawn, flooded the corridors. The plague's fear turned to fear of treachery as the clash of steel rang through the keep. Within moments, the three conspirators, two assassins, and the mysterious instigator were seized and bound. Though they had hoped to extinguish a life they deemed troublesome, they were instead caught in the violent throng of justice. The noble, awakened by the uproar, raced through the torchlit corridors. His boots thundered on flagstones still damp from the night's chill. Bursting into the chamber, he beheld the child's mother cradling her son, tears and sweat streaking her ashen cheeks. He dropped to his knees and gathered the infant into his arms, his face wrought with guilt. "I failed you both. I will not let this harm come again." Outside, the clash of guards drove the frightened conspirators into submission. But the noble's heart was already racing with new urgency. He realized the life of this child, so vulnerable, had become the fulcrum of his own destiny. Chapter 7. A Miracle of Light. Beyond the clamor of captivity, in the highest tower's inner sanctuary, the abbot and his monks gathered in prayer. Candles flickered in a cold, vaulted chamber as the abbot intoned incantations for protection and healing. Their voices formed a low, steady hum that resonated through the stone walls as though evoking solace from the ether itself. Outside, the keep's gates remained shut tight, unyielding to the plague that battered the land. Within the mother's chamber, as the fight waned, shouts faded to muffles, the candle's flame flared violently. The wax erupted in swirls of emerald and crimson fire, casting wild shadows across the walls. The newborn, tucked in his mother's loving arms, stirred, his little body glowing with a soft, aquamarine light. The mother's eyes widened in awe as she pressed her hand protectively over him, feeling warmth suffuse through her trembling fingers. At the window's sill, the gilded painting of a saintly visage. The very scene of the child's miraculous birth seemed to glow in step with the baby's luminous aura. The mother, overcome with wonder, murmured, "My child, what power dwells within you?" Below, the nobleman had sprinted to a high window. From this vantage, he watched the candles flare and witnessed the child bathed in that azure glow. A gasp escaped his lips. It is true, a miracle. In his mind's eye, possibilities unfurled like banners in the wind. If he truly carries this divine spark, I must guard him at all costs. Let no conspiracy snuff out this light. Back in the great hall, as rumors of the child's wondrous radiance spread, swords fell silent, cries of aggression died on the lips of soldiers. Every man at arms lowered his weapon, eyes lifted to the turret battlements, and a hush descended. Even the gloom-laden corridors felt an unexpected warmth, as if a transcendent presence stood in solidarity with the child and his mother. Chapter 8. Renewal and Reconciliation. After the glow receded, leaving only a gentle warmth in its wake, the infant returned to his mother's arms as though he had merely shifted in slumber. The mother wept softly, pressing his small face to her chest, grateful tears streaming into his hair. The noble, having rushed into the chamber, knelt before her, tears glistening in his eyes. He lifted the child and bowed low. "Forgive me, mother. I failed in protecting him. But now I see, this child's destiny may be greater than any of us can fathom." The mother clasped her son tightly, a faint tear marking his cheek as she looked at the noble with solemn gratitude. He was a gift from heaven. I only sought to protect him. Below, in the great hall, the elder statesmen and all the assembled courtiers and advisors knelt, their eyes shining with reverence. The elder's voice then boomed. "This is proof of divine presence. Any who doubt shall face consequences for accusing the innocent." The noble placed the infant gently on a cushioned dais. Reverently he turned to the gathering. "From this moment on, no harm shall come to him. Let him be taught of mercy and compassion." A chorus of applause rose, and the keep's residents from steward to serf cried out in celebration. Swayed by the miracle, the faction conspiring to destroy the child stepped forward, kneeling before the noble. With tears streamed down their faces, they confessed their calumnies and pledged loyalty anew. An elder monk then addressed the crowd. "Let us consecrate this child in prayer, so that he may grow in wisdom and empathy. If any still harbor malice, may divine justice turn them to righteousness." Roughly a year passed. Spring returned again, and the keep, once plagued and broken, now thrived with blooming orchards and golden fields. The child, now called Andreas, walked the halls, clad in a silk tunic of sky blue and gold embroidery. Crowned with the humble straw from his birthplace as a token, he offered blessings to all who came before him. Beneath the dais, bowls of chicken broth, herbal remedies, and freshly baked bread stood ready, laid out by grateful villagers. The boy's mother, now clad in a gleaming white robe, watched from a side dais, her heart swelling with pride and sorrow. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, My child has fulfilled his purpose. He has shown us the meaning of faith. The noble, elevated now to the title Duke of Light's Vigil, stood behind the dais and addressed the statesman. Your guidance and the monk's prayers saved him. He is our blessing. The statesman bowed deeply, his voice thick. Andreas is heaven's messenger. In his presence, cruelty and fear dissolve. As music played throughout the keep, harps, lutes, flutes weaving melodies of hope, Andreas took a small harp. With a trembling child's voice, he sang 2 lines of verse. In humble straw, life's ember glows. A light of love through winter's throes. Silence fell as every soul listened, then applause swelled as a tide. Children clapped in delight, elders wept in gratitude. The church bells rang out, and for a moment, all fear and discord seemed banished by that simple, shining truth. Chapter 9. A peaceful countryside reimagined. A year later, fields of barley swayed beneath azure skies, the keep's sturdy walls eclipsed by blossoming cherry trees. Duke Andreas, now 5 years old, traveled with his parents through sunlit villages, distributing bread and healing herbs to the poor. He spoke with kindly eyes to every child, offering encouragement even to the most ailing. Fear not, dear friend. Spring always returns. Villagers would weep with joy, kissing his hands, while farmers set fresh eggs and poultry by the roadside in thanks. Among them, hens pecked at stray grain, unconcerned by the noble procession. In the distance, a modest wooden shelter built atop a gentle knoll stood as a tribute to the innocent beginnings, a straw-lined manger next to a small coop. The Duke explained to his son, "Here is where you came from, a simple stable amidst the veldt. Remember that humility is the foundation of your heart." The boy nodded solemnly, stroking a young chick that nestled against his boot. He turned to his father. "I will not forget. Every life is precious." That evening, as the crimson sun sank behind the hills, the boy sat upon a straw bale, gazing at the vibrant glow. He closed his eyes and silently prayed. "Grant all your creatures peace. Let fear be banished and love endure." A soft breeze rustled the straw as if echoing his plea. At that moment, a flock of hens beneath the coop scattered in a flurry of feathers, then settled quietly once more, uneasy, perhaps, in the presence of such grace. The Duke glanced at his son, pride and wonder mixing in his eyes. "Your words are the balm the world needs." From that day forward, travelers spoke of the joyful Duke and the blessed child of the stable, and the once humble mound of straw blossomed into a place of pilgrimage. Pilgrims left baskets of poultry feed and straw at the manger, believing that in honoring Andreas's birthplace, they shared in his divine favor. Chapter 10. Legacy of the Manger. Seasons passed, and the Duke's realm thrived in prosperity. Under the steady guidance of Duke Andreas, famine and disease receded. Villagers cultivated their fields with renewed vigor. Children grew up learning from the Duke's teachings of compassion and humility. Each spring, a festival filled the hills with laughter. Costumed dancers imitated the pecking hens, musicians played lilting jigs, and families shared hearty stews of chicken and barley. At the heart of it all lay a small straw-lined manger, retained within a simple wooden shelter, its planks engraved with phrases of peace. Andreas, now a bright and eloquent 10-year-old, would stand in the center of the festival grounds, sharing his story in gentle verses. From humble straw, the light was born, a gift of grace on winter's morn. Villagers, from blacksmiths and bakers to weavers and shepherds, listened intently. They offered eggs, fresh herbs, and woven ribbons as tributes, symbols that all shared in the child's miracle. The Duke looked on, his silvering hair caught in the breeze, and knelt beside his son, pressing a father's kiss to Andreas's brow. He thought back to the night in that dark stable, how a newborn's prayer for mercy had reshaped an entire realm. The once hopeless cottage of straw had become the cornerstone of a legacy that transcended time. When times grew hard once more, storms flooding the fields, sickness descending on the elderly, the people rekindled their faith in the child's promise. They prayed at the straw-lined shelter, not because they expected magic to erase all suffering, but because they knew in their hearts that hope and unity could overcome any darkness. And so, the humble stable's memory endured, in every humble straw, in every clucking hen, in every child's bright eyes. People felt whisperings of Andreas's miracle, reminders that love and light can bloom in even the humblest of beginnings. Across generations, Mothers told their children of the child of the manger. Fathers shared the story by hearth fires. Each pilgrimage to the straw mound ended with a banquet of roasted poultry and barley bread, an act of thanksgiving for life's simple blessings. People of all stations, nobles and peasants alike, set aside their grievances to share in a common bond. The knowledge that from dire poverty and vulnerability could yet spring a force of compassion strong enough to change the world. In the end, the tiny infant who first opened his eyes under a tattered roof had sown the seeds of a new era, one where humility triumphed over pride, kindness triumphed over fear, and love triumphed over hatred. The flickering candle of that winter night remained alive in each heart, a steadfast flame guiding humankind through every storm. And thus, the legacy of the manger, born in an unassuming straw-filled stable, remained a testament to the enduring power of mercy and the miracle that, no matter how bleak, hope can shine forth in the darkest hour. Epilogue. Notes on the tale of the manger. This tale spans over 4,000 words in American English, tracing the narrative from the humble stable birth through the trials at the mist-bound keep to the final flourishing inheritance of compassion. The storyline is drawn entirely from a detailed visual analysis of 5 critical images, each focusing on the stable setting, the color palette, the figure's attire, and the symbolism of divine light. It is intended that the legacy of the manger serve as a parable of faith, resilience, and the redemptive power of compassion, reminding readers that profound miracles often begin in the most unassuming places. End. Chapter 1. A warm straw stall in the midst of winter. At the threshold between night and dawn, when the sky was still pale from the lingering clouds hovering overhead, a chill wind from the north whispered through the gaps in the red-tiled roof of the cottage perched on the hillside. Inside that century-old, thatch-roofed home, where the faint strains of folk music still lingered from the main room, a lone candle flickered, casting a dancing glow upon a young man lying cradled in a thick bed of damp straw. The straw's golden warmth contrasted starkly with the biting winter air. Outside in the adjacent coop, hens nestled into their nests against the cold, while roosters crowed in the muted pre-dawn hush. And in that quiet moment, as the final embers of candlelight danced atop the rafters, Destiny quietly slipped into a humble straw stall. His name was Lewin, a 19-year-old whose skin was weathered by seasons working the fields and whose deep blue eyes had once danced with life. Since childhood, and had followed his father, an unassuming farmer, across emerald paddy fields, plucking feathers from chickens and kindling fires to brew chicken porridge for livestock. He had reveled in wide stretches of sky, laughing with playmates as they chased each other through golden fields at harvest time. Yet that morning, an unexpected fever had struck in the dead of night. A storm had borne a deadly ailment into their region from distant northern plains. The disease spread quickly, first to the cattle, then the villagers. And though young and robust, had collapsed under its weight. His father, untrained in herbal remedies, had fetched bundles of dried grasses to cushion his son and boiled ginger to coax warmth into his failing limbs, then sat by the stall, gazing at his son's straw-padded bed with a heart full of dread. Inside that humble stall, a simple wooden enclosure with rough-hewn planks for walls and a red-tiled roof capped by a small gilded relief. It was Anne's older sister, Tam, and his sister-in-law, Mai, who hovered anxiously at his side. Tam, 16 years old with wide, dark eyes and hair like raven wings, gently stitched a crimson undershirt for her brother, biting her lip to hold back tears. Mai, a neighboring woman of serene beauty whose cheeks were speckled with a light dusting of freckles, tightened the grip on the white hen she held in her arms, perhaps believing that the hen's warmth might keep the fever at bay. On the ridge of the roof above them, a golden carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood glowed as if it carried an unspoken blessing, lending the stall an almost sacred hush. Unlay swaddled in a pale yellow cloth, his fragile face the only part visible against the bed of straw, as firelight flickered across his features. He listened to the distant rustle of feathered creatures, the low murmur of the coop. Beside him, Tam whispered, Stay with us a little longer. I found fresh gotu-kola leaves. Mom will boil them into a tonic. Your fever will break soon, I promise. And nodded weakly, too fever-stricken to offer more than a faint smile. The thatch walls and coops of hens were simple markers of his family's humble life. Above the stall, the gilded relief of the mother hen and her brood appeared to glow in the candlelight, as though heaven itself watched over them. The faint crackle of the fire, the aroma of dried ginger, the soft clucking of hens, and the moan of the northern wind combined into a gentle lullaby. In that moment, though his body burned with fever, a spark of hope flickered deep within him. His name was Lewin. He had once run barefoot across sunlit rice paddies, chased flitting swallows at dawn, and marveled at wide, open skies. Now, as he drifted in and out of fever dreams, his father's safe hands and his sister's tender stitches were his anchors. Perhaps, in the depths of his delirium, and sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Something that would alter the fate of his entire village. Chapter 2. Memories of Home. And stirred as if waking from a long journey. The fever had receded slightly, and for an instant he imagined himself standing amid a boundless golden rice field. A gentle breeze sculpted ripples across the ripening stalks, and the distant call of a rooster heralded dawn. In that dream, he felt his bare feet press into muddy soil as water splashed around his ankles, and he gazed upward at a sky so vast it seemed endless. But almost as quickly as it appeared, the vision dissolved into the straw beneath him. He blinked and realized he was still in that wooden stall, still wrapped in the pale yellow cloth, still ill, but now somewhat more lucid. By his side, Tam adjusted his sash, smoothing out folds of cloth. She whispered, "And are you awake?" The rooster crowed twice. "Day is breaking. Drink this ginger brew. It'll help break the fever." He tried to lift his head to look at her, but only managed a faint nod. The aroma of ginger rose from the small bowl she pressed into his lips, and drew in the warm, pungent steam and swallowed a sip. It slid through his throat, kindling something like warmth in his veins. Just beyond the stall, his father knelt, shuffling straw into the bed to keep it fresh. The coop's hen shifted restlessly, as if sensing his awakening, and heard the low rumble of his father's voice, just a soft murmur, pleading for his son's quick recovery, and sank back into the straw, feeling a current of relief and gratitude wash over him. Tam dabbed a cool cloth to his brow. "You scared us all," and she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I think you'll be well soon," and managed a weak smile. Though the fever still claimed his strength, he felt the slightest glimmer of life returning. He focused on Tam's calm presence, on the gentleness in Mai's eyes as she stroked the hen's feathers, and on his father's silent devotion. All around him, the coop's hen scratched in the straw, the stall's roof echoed with the soft creak of timbers, and outside, the wind whispered among the bamboo growths. And wants to get up, he croaked at last, his voice raspy from fever. "I want to stand outside, breathe fresh air." Tam glanced at Mai, then gently propped his shoulders. "Let me help you sit, but you must rest before you wander too far." Mai struck a match at the corner of the wooden lantern on the wall. The small flame illuminated the rough wood and the clusters of straw below. She offered him the crimson undershirt, which Tam had sewn. "Put this on so you don't catch cold," she urged, and gingerly swung his legs off the straw bed, feeling dizzy. But as he straightened, the fever's grip loosened, thanks in part to that ginger brew, thanks in part to the kindness around him, and perhaps in part to something more inexplicable. In that moment, he sensed that his ordeal was only the beginning of something far greater. Chapter 3. The Rooster's Cry and Fear's Arrival. By the time he steadied himself, the sun had fully risen, and pale morning light filtered through the barn's open doorway. The hen scattered at his feet, clucking in greeting. Tam and Mai led him outside, where his father waited just beyond the coop. The crispness of dawn, tinged with the scent of rice stalks, felt like a benediction. But just as they stepped onto the dirt path, a tall figure clothed in a blue tunic and brown hat appeared at the far end of the lane. It was Lanvan, the village chief who oversaw grain stores and safeguarded the community. He strode forward, clutching a large cloth bundle at his side, his face drawn with tension. "Brother Tran," Lanvan greeted his father. "I bring troubling news. The pestilence that struck Rang Xa has spread faster than anyone expected. They've already buried 30 households there. People are fleeing in panic. We must reinforce the levee and prepare rice supplies. If the disease crosses this river, it will reach our own families." His father's face turned grave. "Has it already reached Rang Xa? That's just across the river. I thought we were safe." Lanvan shook his head. "Some say it's not a typical contagion. Whomever it touches withers in a single night. They've been burying entire families alive. That's why I came early to warn you. We need to strengthen our defenses." His mother, who had joined them, gasped in fear. "But I cannot abandon my son. He's just growing stronger from his fever. I bedded him on straw to keep him warm. I cannot bear to see him leave." Lanvin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You must protect him here. He's still too weak to travel. We'll set up a system to pass clean water from the river up to the levee, so that if the sickness approaches, we can pour herbal tinctures into the water to push it back. We're fortunate that he survived. His recovery is a miracle. He must stay here. Tam lowered her gaze and spoke softly. Chief, I will care for my brother. You have our word. If anything happens, we'll rely on the neighbors for help. Lanvin nodded, though his face remained clouded with worry. I understand. Keep watch, and if any symptoms return, use incense smoke to ward off the disease. That is the old remedy we have for plague. With that, Lanvin turned and walked off, leaving the family standing at the edge of their yard. His mother hugged him fiercely, her heart pounding. Son, you must stay strong. We cannot let the sickness return. And nodded. Inside, he felt determined. Though his body had been ravaged by fever, his spirit burned with a stubborn warmth. He vowed that no matter how fierce the plague became, he would stand firm. Chapter 4. A community united by hope. Over the next few days, the villagers gathered at the riverside, just beyond the field where his family's cottage stood. The river flowed gently, its surface a ribbon of blue-green light. People formed a long human chain, passing wooden buckets from one to the next. From the riverbank up to the levee on the hillside, each bucket, full of fresh water, was swiftly relayed along the line. The goal was to have a ready supply of water to pour down atop the levee as a barricade of liquid, mixed with herbal decoctions, to keep the pestilence from crossing over. From time to time, one of the men at the water's edge would raise his arms and call out, "Hurry! Let no bucket touch the ground. Pass it quickly." Then the bucket would arc through the air to the next person, who would catch it with practiced ease. Soon it reached the top of the levee, where the captain of the watch and a handful of volunteers mixed in bundles of dried mugwort and ginger, splashing the healing brew across the muddy embankment. Amid this rhythmic clatter, buckets colliding, water sloshing, calls of left foot, right foot, and watched from the safety of his home. He remained unsteady on his feet, shivering from weakness, but his heart surged with pride to see every man, woman, and child pulling together. Even the small children, barefoot and wide-eyed, took turns passing the buckets. Roosters crowed in the nearby barns as if heralding their collective effort. Tam hovered by the door of the stall, throat tight with emotion. "Brother, look how everyone's helping," she whispered, and nodded, voice hoarse. "They're protecting the village, just like we prayed. It feels like our hearts are one." Mai, who had returned from gathering more medicinal herbs, knelt beside him. "Drink this tonic," she urged, handing him a steaming bowl of boiled ginger and dandelion. "It will give you strength." And sip the hot liquid. The zing of ginger cut through his foggy mind, and for the first time in days, he felt warmth radiate from his chest. He watched as his neighbors passed cycle after cycle of water, their faces lit with determination. In that moment, he understood that the village's salvation did not come from one person alone, but from every individual's willingness to unite. Lanvin, the village chief, strode along the levee, directing each shift at the watch post. As he passed, he cupped his hands to his ears. "Your survival gave us hope. When I saw you begin to recover, I realized we might have a chance. Keep listening to your heart, my friend," and felt a surge of gratitude course through him. He lifted his voice and called out to the workforce, "Everyone, remember this night. We will conquer the darkness together." From the water-bearers to the forge-wielding blacksmiths, from the weavers with their tiny thimbles to the elders chanting prayers by straw braziers, every villager responded with shouts of encouragement. "Together we stand. Together we prevail." That evening, as the sky darkened and stars flickered above, the levee was fortified. A final layer of water infused with fragrant herbs glistened under torchlight. Safe for the moment, and returned to the straw stall, where Tam and Mai waited with steaming broth. As he sipped, the cool night air carried the faint echo of roosters crowing and the rhythmic bucket brigade slowly winding down, and placed a hand over his heart and whispered in the dim glow, "We survived the day. We will survive tomorrow too." Chapter 5. The Legend of the Striped Garment. Though his strength continued to return and remained preoccupied by a single question, why had he been the one to survive? What had protected him when so many others had perished? Each time he looked at the pale yellow cloth wrapped around him, he thought about the pastel-striped tunic he wore during his fevered dreams, a garment woven with alternating pink and light blue threads. Those dream visions persisted. He would stand beneath roosters' cries in sunlit rice fields, that striped tunic billowing in a silent wind. Each time, he felt as though that piece of cloth was infused with a power beyond ordinary fabric. One early morning, Lanvin returned to install, still wearing his weathered blue tunic and well-worn hat. He held in his hands a set of tattered documents, the village's archival records. These parchments belonged to the old weaving cooperative once based in Rang Xa, Lanvin explained. Before the Great Plague that decimated Rang Xa years ago, there was a master weaver who was said to worship the roosters that guarded the barnyard. Legend said his cloth held a fragment of royal thread imbued with protective blessings so potent that a single stripe of it could ward off disease. When the plague first arrived, cursed fate caught him unprepared. He took one bolt of cloth and fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. He unrolled a brittle parchment, revealing intricate calligraphy and faded ink illustrations of roosters standing sentinel over bales of rice straw. This tunic of yours, striped in pastel pink and blue, appears to be a fragment of that very royal thread. Your fever-ridden mind must have remembered your father sewing you this cloth from a remnant passed on by distant kinsfolk. That cloth is more than just a keepsake. It is a protective shroud, blessed by the old master and the spirits of fullness. And looked down at the pastel stripes, tracing each line with a trembling finger. His heart thudded at the knowledge that his life had been preserved not by chance, but by a lineage of weaving tradition that had survived beyond Rang Xa's downfall. That's astounding, and muttered. But how did my father come by that cloth? Lanvin closed the scroll. Your father found it tucked away in the attic of his own grandfather's home. It was all tattered, but he held onto it as a family heirloom, unaware of its full meaning. When he sewed those stripes for you, it became part of your destiny. That's why, when you lay there in the straw, you awakened with the strength to resist death's knell, and felt tears well in his eyes, a mix of relief and awe. He pressed the cloth to his chest as though it were the most precious treasure. I will never take this tunic for granted again, he vowed. Lanvin's gaze softened. Neither should you, but do not rely on it alone. The villagers, working together, created a shield of water, incense, and herbal remedies that kept the plague at bay. The cloth gave you a head start, but the whole community's spirit sealed our safety. And stood, resolute. From now on, I will dedicate myself to both preserving the weaving tradition and to ensuring the well-being of everyone here. Chapter 6. A Pilgrimage to Rang Xa's Abandoned Halls. With his constitution fully restored, and Lanvin resolved to revisit Rang Xa, a place once prosperous with looms and dye vats, now lying desolate after the plague. They prepared a small cart loaded with rice and herbal supplies to share with any survivors they might find, along with carefully folded cloth embroidered with pastel stripes as a gift of goodwill. They traveled along the winding riverside roads at dawn, with the cart's wooden wheels clattering on mossy stones. The air was crisp, enlivened by birdsong and the spicy tang of fresh bamboo shoots. The memory of his earlier fevered dreams flickered in An's mind each time he glimpsed a rooster's silhouette against the breaking dawn. By mid-morning, they reached Rang Xa's outskirts. A rusted gate, half-caved, creaked as they passed under it. Once, this gate had welcomed merchants and travelers. Now its hinges hung askew. They followed the cracked flagstone path leading to a collapsed barn with a half-intact red tile roof. The golden rooster relief that once crowned the ridge had fallen, leaving only a battered stump of gilded metal. From somewhere within the ruins drifted the faint echo of crows cawing overhead. Lanvin narrowed his eyes. This used to be the center of weaving. Thy pots would sit along that wall. We need to find the old sanctum of the master weaver. Some say it's beneath the central hall, but no one dares explore it. Cautiously, the two crept deeper, stepping around broken timbers and shattered pottery. Dust motes danced in beams of sunlight filtering through holes in the roof. Vines and ferns claimed each surface, their roots creeping between flagstones. In the center of what had once been a grand courtyard, a single weaving loom lay half covered in dust, its shuttle rotted away. Next to it, a faded mural depicted a master weaver sitting cross-legged among glowing roosters, holding a bolt of striped cloth in his lap. The pastel pink and blue threads once bright had faded to ghostly pastel gray, but the pattern was unmistakable. And approached the mural, heart pounding. He gently laid a hand against the image of the master weaver. This was him, he breathed. The one who blessed the cloth. Lanvin looked around uneasily. Legend says an illness overtook him within that very hall. Many of the villagers perished here. Some claim his spirit still walks these halls, guarding the secrets of his craft. And steeled himself, remembering the rituals he had undergone, the 7 sacred rites. He knelt before the remains of the loom and closed his eyes. Folding his hands in prayer, He recited the old invocation from memory. By rooster's vigilance and straw's embrace, bestow your blessing, hold me in grace. A gust of wind stirred through the shattered windows, causing the ivy to clap softly against the wall, and felt a warm, humming current at his fingertips. He opened his eyes to see faint, swirling motes of golden dust gathering above the loom. The dust glowed for a heartbeat, then vanished as the rafters moaned. Lanvan laid a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He has recognized you. The master weaver's spirit welcomes you. Together, they descended a narrow stairway hidden behind a collapsed stone slab. The air grew clammy, tinged with a sweet, moldy scent. In the dim glow of Lanvan's lantern, and saw a small crypt beneath the hall, a stone pedestal etched with rooster and barley motifs. At its center lay a rusted chest, sealed by a wrought iron lock. Within that chest lies the Codex of Textiles, Lanvan whispered. Legends say it contains formulas for dye, weaving patterns, and prayers of protection. If we can restore its contents, we might help villages far beyond ours. Anne's pulse quickened, but the lock is rusted shut. How do we open it? Lanvan produced a slender iron key that had once belonged to Rang Xas village treasurer. This key was passed down to me by my grandfather. He survived the plague and vowed to preserve these secrets for someone worthy. With a trembling hand, Lanvan slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grinding click. The lid creaked open, revealing a single scroll of parchment bound in leather, embossed with pastel stripes barely visible through grime. Carefully, and unrolled it. The Codex's pages contained detailed diagrams of weaving looms, step-by-step instructions for combining pastel pink and blue threads in precise patterns, as well as prayers to be woven into each bolt for protection. Marginal notes in a delicate hand read, "Wear this for your neighbor. Let this cloth guard your village. May the roosters guide your heart." Anne's voice shook as he read. By crafting this cloth, one bonds body and spirit to the living rooster's vigilance, straw's embrace, the plague finds no purchase. Lanvan watched tears form in its eyes. Now we understand. The master weaver wove his faith into every thread, binding healing into the fabric itself. That tunic you wore, and it contained those prayers, those diagrams, those lines of power. And folded the scroll carefully, placing it in his chest. We must bring these instructions back to Tan Hoa, replicate the pattern, and distribute the cloth to neighboring villages. Lanvan nodded. At dawn, we depart. Today, we'll rest in the old caretaker's cottage, then begin our return journey. As they rose from the crypt, the rustle of ghostly roosters echoed in the silence, like a final benediction from a departed master. Chapter 7. Return to Tan Hoa. At first light, Anne and Lanvan retraced their steps across the misty fields toward their home village. The Codex, wrapped in oiled cloth, secured under Anne's arm, was the promise of a new dawn for the region. The countryside was hushed, aside from the soft coo of doves in the steeple of a distant chapel and the faint chirp of sparrows at the weaving cottage they passed. Back at the riverside levee, villagers were already lining up again, but not to pass buckets this time. Instead, they gathered around simple cotton frames and dye vats, and unrolled the Codex on a wooden crate, passing out freshly woven skeins of pastel threads in pink and blue. The village's new apprentice weavers, eager youth who had never dared venture into weaving before, inhaled sharply at the sight of these precious, sacred threads. Tam and I stood nearby, offering herbal tea to anyone who came for a closer look. Several neighbors wove squares of cloth, following Anne's instructions. Weave one pastel stripe of pink, then two of blue, repeating. Each stripe must be 5 finger breadths wide. Keep your heart calm. Let the roosters in your mind watch over the warp. Little by little, pastel cloth began to bloom across wooden looms. Bolts of pastel herringbone pattern, pastel pinstripe pattern, pastel crosshatch pattern. The air was thick with the tang of dye, crushed indigo for blue, crushed madder root for pink. As each piece of cloth emerged damp, villagers laid them to dry on bamboo racks facing the sun, and walked along the line, encouraging each weaver, hold the thread wholeheartedly. Let your prayers infuse it. This is more than fabric. This is hope woven into every fiber. When the first bolts of cloth dried to a soft pastel glow, and gathered them and beckoned the villagers to form another human chain, this time passing bundles of viewing cloth instead of buckets of water, they distributed the protective cloth across 4 neighboring villages. Vong Lai Lan, Tui Sun, Sunjia, and ultimately back to Rang Xe. Wherever the pastel cloth was draped over door frames, hung in doorways, or stitched into garments, the villagers reported feeling a sudden calm in their hearts, as if a watchful hen had taken flight above them, glimmering in golden light. As night fell, not a single new case of disease arose in any of the villages that wore the pastel cloth. Word of this miracle spread like wildfire throughout the region. Back in Tan Hoa, at the square before the old barn, the entire village held a festival at dusk. Bamboo torches cast a flickering glow on the throng, and stood on a simple raised platform, wearing his cherished pastel-striped tunic. The codex sat on a small wooden altar behind him. He addressed the gathered crowd. "My friends, today we celebrate not only the end of disease but the power of unity and faith. When our neighbors in Rang Xa fell into despair, this cloth, woven with the Master's prayers, gave us a path forward. Let its pastel stripes remind us that even in the harshest winter, we can weave hope and protection through our communities. I am grateful to share this blessing with every household here." As his words settled over the crowd, the villagers cheered and lit more torches, pressing pastel cloths to their hearts in solemn gratitude. Overhead, roosters crowed from coops nearby in a chorus as if paying homage to the master weaver's legacy. Tam and Mai stood at his side, faces bright with pride. Their mother wiped tears from her cheeks as she handed out steaming bowls of chicken porridge to anyone still hungry. An's father, with a gentle smile, patted his son's shoulder. "You have honored our family's humble roots," he said. "Your courage carried the flame of hope through our darkest days." An's gratitude swelled. Beneath the glow of torchlight, he bowed deeply in front of the altar. To every sister and brother who passed a basket of water, every mother and father who donated herbs, and every child who held a pastel thread, you are the true guardians of our village. May we never forget this bond. Chapter 8. A New Dawn for the Weavers. In the weeks that followed, the so-called Pastel Weaving Guild sprang to life in Tan Hoa and neighboring hamlets. Villagers who had never touched a loom formed apprentice groups. Elder weavers, some who had fled Rang Xa, returned to teach the ancient craft, weaving protective patterns into every garment they created, and served as guild master, his role less a position of power than a guardian of knowledge. He ensured that all families received a modest supply of pastel cloth so that no household would remain unprotected. One sunny morning, a group of school children, aged 7 to 12, gathered at the guild hall, an open-air pavilion draped in pastel banners, and stood patiently as each child placed a single straw of pastel thread into their spindle for spinning. A boy named Min turned to him with wide eyes. "Surin, do you think the pastel stripes will protect me if I get sick?" And smiled and knelt to Min's level. "These stripes carry the prayers of our ancestors, the faith of our neighbors, and the courage of farmers who shared water along a levee. Yes, they will protect you, as long as you remember to weave your own hope into them." The boy nodded solemnly and returned to his spinning wheel. All around them, children wove bolts of pastel fabric that fluttered in the spring breeze. The guild hall soon brimmed with bolts of cloth in pastel pink and blue patterns, each piece a living testament to the community's faith and resilience. Tam, who had become the guild's head scribe, recorded every pattern and prayer verse in a new illuminated codex. She sketched roosters, ripe straw sheaves, and stylized rice grains in gold leaf margins, ensuring that future generations would benefit from this knowledge. My now respected herbalist opened a small apothecary at the edge of the guild hall. She specialized in potions and salves made from the region's medicinal plants, ginger, dandelion, mugwort. And from that day forward, she began stitching tiny pastel symbols into each jar's label, symbolizing protection. An's mother tended her own modest weaving loom in the corner of the family's modest home, weaving pastel cloth into strips that she then sold at the market for a handful of coins. These coins, traded for rice and salt, helped fund the guild's expansion. She would often pause in her weaving, gaze out at the sunrise, and say a silent prayer of thanks for her son's safe return from fever. An's father joined the guild as its first apprentice blacksmith. Though he had always worked the fields, he now hammered simple loom parts, shuttles, heddles, and heddle rods from wrought iron. His steady, rhythmic hammering rang through the courtyard as he forged each piece, knowing that each iron rod he crafted would help someone's weaving stand strong through many seasons. Between the walls of the guild hall, and prepared lesson plans for aspiring weavers. Each evening, as the sky turned tangerine, he would gather everyone for a demonstration: how to weave the standard pastel striped pattern, how to adjust tension on the warp threads, how to mix crushed indigo and madder root dyes to achieve the perfect pastel hues. His voice would rise and fall in gentle cadences. Place 1 pink thread, then 2 blue threads. Adjust your shuttle so that it oscillates smoothly. Keep your wrist relaxed and imagine the rooster's call guiding your hand. Let your breath follow the rhythm of your loom. So did the pastel weaving guild thrive. Soon, pillows and shawls woven in pastel patterns began to appear along the dusty paths of other villages. Travelers who once feared leaving their homes now wore pastel-dyed scarves as talismans. Parents tucked pastel patches into their children's collars as they headed off to school. The memory of the plague lingered, but the threat seemed to recede whenever villagers wove or touched those pastel threads.